Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto meets his mother during the Chunin exams. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Hey Kakashi-sensei, can you help me train for the finals? Naruto asked after resting from his victory in the preliminary rounds against Kiba in Izuka, where he vowed to win for the sake of his friend Hinata Hyuga, the heiress of the Hyuga clan, for the finals, which is coming up in 2 months. No Naruto, I gotta train Sasuke. His promotion to Chunin is riding on him winning. The only reason you're here in the first place is because the Chunin exams require 3 genin to enter as a team, he said uninterested while reading his porn, with Sasuke giving a smug grin as he was getting his way. Yeah, Naruto baka, just go away and stop bothering Sasuke-kun. The team's resident fangirl and next possible spoil of war, Sakura Haruno, daughter of the civilian council head Sakiri Haruno. The girl is considered Kunoichi of the year for the fact that she only passed due to her book smarts, when in terms of combat she's as poor as a first-year academy student. As Sasuke was considered the genin of the year because the academy instructors kissed his ass and tweaked his grades since the beginning. As he rid himself of the ringing sensation in his head after the near concussive blow to the skull mixed with her screech, he watched them all walk away as they missed the large burst of killer intent sent their way from Naruto himself. I thought they would never fucking leave. If I had the strength I would wipe out Konoha and be done with it. Acting that fucking chipper every day is literally killing me. Just calm down, Naruto. When you get the strength it will all be for the better when you can take your himes and get the hell out of here, he thought as he picked himself up, brushing dirt off his orange monstrosity he called clothing. He knew full well about his family, as his name wasn't just Naruto Uzumaki. No, that was the half-lie that Sarutobi gave the village to keep them clueless. His full name was Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju, son of Kushina Uzumaki Uchiha and Minato Namikaze Senju. He also knew about Sarutobi and his student Jiraiya's plan to make him into a loyal weapon to use the power of Kurama, otherwise known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune, as they've lied to his godmother and cousin Tsunade about him dying as a way to keep him from knowing the love of a family, as well as making his status as a Jinchuriki, which was meant to be kept secret as it had always been, became public, causing the village, save for those who were kind to him, to treat him with hatred. He knew it all, and when he found out he told the few who he was truly loyal to of his findings. The second Chunin exams instructor Anko Mitarashi and her friends Yugo Azuki, Hana Inuzuka, as well as her clan, Kurenai Yuhi, and Hinata Hyuga, with the ramen stand owner Tuchi Ichiraku and Ayame Ichiraku. Like him, they were tired of the way the village went south with its arrogance and wanted to see it knocked down a few pegs, or more so to watch it burn, as the history of the village was erased into nothingness, like they betrayed his clan in sabotaging Uzu's defenses and intended to get revenge for his family. Brushing the various dark thoughts aside, he walks to his hidden training ground to practice his true skills that he kept hidden from the world, as his Sharingan activated, forming a 6-bladed curved shuriken with a 3-pointed star in the center, before he broke a genjutsu he had on his right hand to reveal a seal, which brought out an abnormally long katana that was at least 8 feet in length. Meditating with his sword Masamune placed on his lap, he closed his eyes as he evened his breathing as he thought over his skills. Before Izan, Itachi, went rogue, she trained him in secret since he was a child, and because of her training she taught him all the forms of the shinobi life, lying and seduction being 2 of his most useful, as he managed to get around difficult questions that involved him and knew what to say to get a girl pretty hot under the collar. Though his actual skills lied in the shinobi arts, and lying of course. She always said he was a kitsune at heart. With her help she made him as strong as her when she was in the Anbu, and trained his Sharingan, as she too supported his ideals concerning Konoha after they made her execute her entire family save for her brother, as was the request of the village to make more Uchiha who followed the village's command. Getting up, he created several hundred clones as he got into his beginning stance as they all charged at him. With Izan. Hey Izan, you sure this is where the cutie is? I mean, I know leader Sama wanted him, but how are we going to get him without the village going into alert? Her companion, a tall, blue-skinned beauty who had what looked like gills on her cheeks, with 2 on each, with sharp yellow eyes and a slashed kiri headband, asked with a large bandaged sword on her back, as the 2 wore identical black trench coats with red clouds spread across them. She nodded her long midnight blue hair bobbing with each step as she said while traversing the trees, "Yes Kishi, he usually trains here in this hidden training ground to not have anyone spy on him. That's why Yuri has had a hard time tracking him to an exact location, but I know he frequents 3 places, his parents' home being one." Hopping to another tree as a serene feeling washed over them, she counted off a second, the next being a ramen stand whose owner's daughter is quite fond of him. As they stopped on another tree when they came into view to see a largely destroyed training ground with a tall blonde-haired youth, albeit shorter than his fellow genin and lacked muscle mass due to poor nutrition thanks to Konoha and them keeping a close eye on him. He still had slight muscle to gain a woman's attention should they look. He was contently lying on his back shirtless with his eyes closed as his headband was clutched in his hand as a stainless steel onyx lightning bolt was resting on his chest. And lastly, the training ground I trained Naruto-kun in since he was a child, she said with a barely noticeable smile before it vanished as she looked to her right to see her partner and friend drooling while looking at his chest. Wow, would you look at him, he's packing some serious muscle. Who would have thought with the fact he wears that orange monstrosity? I wonder what he's packing in the basement, she said before shutting up as Izan gave her a stern glare. She was about to say something until they heard, "For two tenchi to grace me with their elegance and beauty makes me wonder what I did in a past life to be rewarded so. Though Izan-sensei, if I knew you and your lovely friend were coming I would have cleaned up a bit." She and Kishi blushed, looked down to see Naruto himself standing up with a smile as his eyes were closed. "I mean, look at me covered in dirt and blood. My hair is a mess and I reek of sweat, I must look a sight." She gave a soft giggle that sounded like music to his ears as she said, "It's great to hear your witty humor, Naruto-kun, but in all seriousness our leader wants you." All humor left his face as he said, "And I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say this leader is of the Akatsuki, the group who are hunting the Jinchuriki, or more so the biju they contain." She nodded, making him frown slightly before he reached for Masamune as he sealed it away. And activated another seal on his right shoulder, unleashing a long black katana with the three-pronged extensions on the bladed side as a long chain hung reaching the ground, as well as its sheath, which he placed on his left hip, saying, "Then if you are going to take me, Izan-sensei, how about a spar for old time's sake? I want to see how I fare compared to back when you were originally training me." She nodded as she brought out her old Anbu katana as she turned to Kishi saying, "Keep an eye out for anyone in case we have to run." The shark woman nodded as she created a few water clones to look over the area while interested to see how the fight would turn out. Hokage's office. "Sensei," the aged Kage heard, causing him to turn to the window as his only student inside, Konoha, sat outside of. "Jiraiya, shouldn't you be training Naruto?" he asked as Jiraiya shook his head in a negative, making his eyes narrow. "I looked all over the village for him but I can't find him. He must be training on his own then," he said, scratching his chin watching his leader growl. "Damn it, let's not worry, we have 2 months and when he comes back you'll take him as an apprentice and try to instill loyalty into him, furthering his drive to be Hokage to earn the village's respect," he said, trying to keep their plan on the rails as he nodded. "It's Naruto's sworn duty to become their weapon and to gain control of the elemental nations with them on top, as they rightfully should." The sage nodded before giggling perversely and running towards the closest hot spring as he smoked his pipe, thinking, "Once Jiraiya trains him I'll have him alter the Shiki Fuin to make sure every time he taps into the Kyuubi's chakra he'll be struck with thoughts of loyalty towards the village. Though I just can't figure out where that boy is. Oh well, he'll turn up." Akatsuki base. Inside the Akatsuki base was a large statue which appeared to have had 9 eyes on it, with its hands shackled as they were raised upwards as if trying to catch something with its mouth wide open. On each finger were women of notorious S-rank as kunoichi, and on the head of the ominous statue were 2 other women. Both had red hair with black streaks as the 2 wore some kind of mask. The shorter of the 2 masked women said in a deathly tone as her whirlpool-styled mask covered her face save for an eyehole that showed a Sharingan with a red lotus and a black sun. "Do the 2 of you mind explaining why the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was retrieved with severe injuries?" Even though her tone was even, it sent a slight shiver down all of their spines as Izan said, "Well, Leader Sama, we went to catch Naruto-kun as directed and he even knew who the 2 of us were yet showed no fear." That got a few raised eyebrows as a genin not only knew of 2 S-ranked kunoichi but also lacked any signs of fear. Thinking she prompted for her to continue, "Anyways, he greeted us and well, I think it would be easier showing you than explaining." Forming several hand signs she said, "Ninpo. Jiken no Kagami, ninja art, mirrors of time." Several screens appeared in front of the women as they all saw a surprising sight. Flashback. "Wow, would you look at him, he's packing some serious muscle. Who would have thought with the fact he wears that orange monstrosity? I wonder what he's packing in the basement." she said before shutting up as Izan gave her a stern glare. She was about to say something until they heard, "For two tenchi to grace me with their elegance and beauty makes me wonder what I did in a past life to be rewarded so. Though Izan-sensei, if I knew you and your lovely friend were coming I would have cleaned up a bit." She and Kishi blushed, looked down to see Naruto himself standing up with a smile as his eyes were closed. "I mean, look at me covered in dirt and blood. My hair is a mess and I reek of sweat, I must look a sight." She gave a soft giggle that sounded like music to his ears as she said, "It's great to hear your witty humor, Naruto-kun, but in all seriousness our leader wants us to retrieve you." All humor left his face as he said, "And I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say this leader is of the Akatsuki, the group who are hunting the Jinchuriki, or more so the Biju they contain." She nodded, making him frown slightly before he reached for Masamune as he sealed it away. And activated another seal on his right shoulder, unleashing a long black katana with the three-pronged extensions on the bladed side as a long chain hung reaching the ground, as well as its sheath which he placed on his left hip, saying, "Then if you are going to take me Izan-sensei, how about a spar for old time's sake? I want to see how I fare compared to back when you were originally training me." She nodded as she brought out her old Anbu katana as she turned to Kishi, saying, "Keep an eye out for anyone in case we have to run." The shark woman nodded as she created a few water clones to look over the area while interested to see how the fight would turn out. Removing her cloak, she had on her old Anbu armor underneath that strained against her D-cup bust as she squared off against Naruto, who adopted the same expressionless visage. "Play the theft, Atreyu." The two charged and met in the center as they were coated in sparks before they distanced themselves as Izan created two shadow clones to circle around him and attack at his vital points before he stabbed his Tensa Zanjetsu into the ground and pushed himself away. The two clones who missed him ended up stabbing each other as Izan jumped back to avoid getting cut as Naruto used the chain to pull his sword back. "Izan-sensei, I asked you to take this seriously. I'm fighting you at full strength. I would like it if you gave me the full respect," he said as he started a chain of hand signs that for even her were slightly blurred. Futon. Kasaku fu no Dongan, wind style, drilling wind bullet. Exhaling, he spat out a flurry of compressed balls of wind that swarmed her, causing her to jump away only to have Naruto in front of her as he was about to swing his sword, making her bring hers up in defense. Only for his swinging hand to not have the sword as his left hand caught it and brought it up, only for it to be blocked when a second Izan slowly walked next to him as she wrapped her arms around him and exploded, blowing him back. Skidding to a halt, he looked at his arm to see it slightly singed before another Izan appeared as she repeated the process, except it was Naruto that exploded in a burst of wind. She was pushed back as she was covered in deep cuts which were bleeding rather lightly as a sharp blade of wind flew across the ground where a deep groove appeared in the ground. As it made contact, she burst into a flock of crows, making him curse, especially with the rise in heat. He turned to see a large fireball coming his way, making him substitute with the shirt of the jumpsuit. "Oh, that was a close one," Naruto said, whipping sweat from his brow as a clone appeared as the two fired a volley of fireballs and one large one. "Oh fuck." He formed a series of hand signs and said, "Futon. Kamigami no Shiru, wind style. Shell of the wind god." When the barrage of fire jutsu came, they caused a huge explosion that dispersed, showed him using his left arm to shield his face as it was burnt up to his shoulder. Fighting the pain in his arm, he pointed up, making her look up to see another Naruto with a Fuma shuriken being tossed in her direction, which she ducked under, missing both Naruto's smirks. From that there was another Naruto who threw several shuriken which had ninja wire on them as he directed where they went and wrapped around her before the shuriken embedded themselves into the ground. With the main wire between his teeth, he thought, "Thanks Teme for the technique." Forming a few signs, he sent out a large dragon made of fire as it skimmed across the wire, hitting her only for there to be a log in her place. Jumping away, he missed a volley of kunai and shuriken as he ducked under a strike with her sword as he kicked her in the stomach and threw another volley of compressed wind while coating his sword in wind. He swung the blade as another blade of wind sliced the ground, this time landing a serious injury on her. The two were physically exhausted, and with the Shiki Fuin on Naruto, his reserves were cut drastically and were about to pass out. She said, "Well Naruto, it seems you're about to collapse. Why don't you give up? There would be no shame in it." Smirking, he said, "No, I'm good, but if you want to give up I won't think any less of you, Izan-chan." Smirking, she brought her sword up as Naruto did and charged, getting into close combat until he passed out face first with a large gash across the chest. Panting slightly, she turned to Kishi, who was wide-eyed, making her ask, "What? This is just the first time I've seen you actually put an effort into a fight, even though you were still holding back quite a bit of your strength still, but for him to make you work for the win is still an accomplishment," she said with a fanged grin as her companion rolled her eyes in annoyance. "Just pick up his sword and let's get out of here, alright? Leader Sama wants Naruto-kun and she's never been this forward in anything neither of them have," Izan said as she picked up Naruto, being cautious of his wounds. Even though Kishi didn't show it, she was pouting on the inside as she watched Izan pick up Naruto while she grabbed his sword and followed quickly behind her. Stop music. Akatsuki base. All the Akatsuki could do was stare wide-eyed at the images they were shown as one of the two zombie sisters as Hisaya, a woman with white hair that was cut on one side with the other coming below her ear and over her eye, while it all came below her jaw. Her cloak was open, showing her chest was covered by bandages and a black skirt that had a long slit on the side that gave mobility and showed she was wearing bandages to cover her modesty with a rope pulled in a loop attached to a triple-bladed scythe. She said, "Damn, Gaki's fine. Even with that funky seal weakening him, he's still a badass to fight Izan as long as he did, even in unfair ground, and those are muscles I would love to feel." Getting a groan from the girl next to her, who had a tanned tone with multiple stitches on her with her sclera being black with yellow eyes, said, ignoring the possible pedophile, "She got a, 'fuck you Katsu,' from her partner," as she continued. "However, he shows promise even with the handicap. If he could be given more training, he could even go as far as to be stronger than Leader Sama," she said as she looked at the two on the head. "What are you two intending to do with him? You never really specified why he was so important," she asked as the redhead said. "We were going to tell everyone the plan when he came to, as one of Mayu's paths will bring him in," she said as she looked over to the second redhead with multiple piercings on her body with metallic purple eyes with 6 rings going outward from pupil to sclera. She nodded, saying, "He's still unconscious, but give him time. He has suffered a bit of chakra exhaustion thanks to Orochimaru using that Shiki Fuin on him. It gave perfect chakra control over his beyond cage reserves, although it also reduced said reserves to a low Chunin, but thankfully we removed it, so his chakra is restoring itself." The dark-haired female nodded, saying, "Good, alert us when he does wake up so we can start." She nodded and closed her eyes, using her abilities to overshadow the path she assigned to watch over him, as she admittedly found him to be rather attractive, though other than the Shiki Fuin and the seal containing the 9 tails, she felt there was something off about him before she checked him over when a hand gripped her hand tightly enough to hear the bones crack. "Akatsuki base barracks. What are you doing and who are you?" she heard him say with his eyes still closed, causing her to gasp slightly, not knowing he was awake until she flinched when he squeezed a little harder, making her answer. "I'm Mayu Uzumaki, Kushina's cousin and member of the Akatsuki. After you passed out, Izan and Kishi brought you back here to get your injuries treated and to get that seal taken off your body," she said, relieved when he released his grip. "I'm sorry, I tend to keep my guard up around suspicious surroundings. And did you say Uzumaki? I thought they were whipped out during the Third War," he said, sitting up with a wince as she helped him into a sitting position as she sat on the side of his bed. "As far as I know, you and I are the only Uzumaki alive, but I question why you have blonde hair when your name is Uzumaki," she questioned when he pointed to a seal on his scalp. "The Hokage wants me to bear a resemblance to my father, who was the 4th, so the people would be further enraged, so they would take their anger out on me, so the Hokage could further mold me into a tool so he can take over the elemental nations as the container of the strongest Biju taking the field," he said, looking at her before a slight smile came to his face. "Though if I do wonder what it is you all want with little Omi," he said, standing as he looked down to see he was now wearing a pair of sweatpants as he raised a visible eyebrow at the blushing redhead. What clothing you were wearing was damaged and I was assigned to change your clothing and tend to your injuries," she said, getting an appreciative smile from him which caused her to blush slightly before schooling her emotions and returned to her stoic personality. With his smile still in place, he said, "Well, nonetheless, thank you anyways. So I guess your leader wants to see me for something?" She nodded as she closed her eyes again before she opened them again and told him to follow her, as he complied, following closely as he has yet to fully recover and found walking difficult. "Akatsuki base. Leader Sama, he is on his way," Mayu said, opening her eyes as the dark-haired woman nodded as she looked at the redhead, who was practically vibrating with excitement for everyone who sees this, wondering why they will soon find out. "I brought him, Leader Sama." the redhead said before vanishing as the sole Jinchuriki stood in the middle of everyone as the girls openly ogled him as they all slightly frowned seeing that he had muscle but it was hardly noticeable due to his malnutrition. After a few moments of awkward silence he said with a slight wave of the hand, "Yo." Getting over their mental tirade about his poor health, the leader with the spiky black hair said, "Hello Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju, I see you've already made quite the impression with Izan and Kishi." Giving a slight smirk he said, "As I've told them I must have done something in a past life to be graced with such symbols of beauty. And yes, Izan-chan had told me you all wanted me for something which I would guess involves the overly imposing statue with the 8 open eyes." She nodded saying, "That is correct. You see Naruto, our goal as you might not know is to acquire peace in the elemental nations and to do that is to stop the bloodshed in the lands." He nodded as he said, "Yes, but to do that you would need to take away the village's main boasting point, the Jinchuriki. But even with that alone there is the Leaf Village as a whole save for a few inhabitants." Even though he and the others couldn't see it, the two masked kunoichi's eyebrows were raised with the redhead saying, "How so Naruto? And exactly what do you mean when involving the leaf?" Stretching with a slight wince he said, "Since the first and second Hokage died the leaf has been power hungry as they've done everything they could to bolster their strength, going as far as to disguise themselves as another village just to weaken their enemies to deal the final blow themselves. When I was a naive child I found some damning evidence in the case of a little black book in the Hokage's office with his plans since when he was a mere genin in hopes of making the Leaf Village reach the top of the ladder in Konoha and all others licking the heels of their sandals. Even as to have me be conditioned to become a mindless pawn and pariah, so I'll do whatever the village says," he said, unsealing said little black book with a gold leaf insignia etched on the front which he promptly tossed up. As they read it more came to light the assisting Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri in the downfall of Uzu. The possible plans involving the Jinchuriki to be under the Leaf Village's sole control. The more they read the more the killer intent flooded the base. He nodded saying, "You see what I mean about Konoha. Though since I've lived there for a few years there are a few clans who would be willing to assist us due to some of the things the Hokage has done to them in the past." The woman with a Venus flytrap on her shoulders whose skin was split between white and black said, "And what is it that they've done to them Naruto-kun?" Looking at her he said, "Whenever the village has a prosperous ninja, i.e. the clans, for example Izan who showed promise decided to either retire or do something that the Hokage council didn't agree with, they've done something they weren't too fond of." Grabbing the book he read a few examples. With the Inuzuka Tsunade-chan's husband Koga wanted to retire but he had the most skill in their clan's taijutsu and techniques, but the council weren't too fond of it and sent him on a suicide mission while claiming to Tsume he ran into trouble. This trouble being the Konoha Anbu being at the location as both he and his partner were killed. Reading another he said, and another example being Hinata-chan's mother Hinako wanted to end the separation between branches but both the council and the Hyuga clan her husband included found this undesirable and poisoned her during childbirth, hoping to mold their last daughter to their image. And another, and lastly Yugo Azuki's fiancé was a promising swordsman that if his health wasn't failing would have possibly been capable of giving the 7 swordsmen of the mist possible Orochi Teme a run for their Ryo. But that's the thing, even without Tsunade such a simple problem like a misfire on the poison mist jutsu causing the poison to last in the lungs would be simple for even a beginning medical ninja. Izan said, seeing where this was going, picked up, so to keep him under their thumb knowing that if he got better he would retire and married Yugo as would she too retire to raise a family. To prevent this they kept him ill. He nodded saying, "That's right," although Baki of Tsunade just made their job easier as he killed him when he listened in on the plan to invade Konoha with the assistance of Sound, who is the main cause as a certain snake is spearheading this with Sasuke as his secondary focus. "What of my brother and how is he?" she asked as Naruto sighed. "Izan, to be blunt, your brother is an arrogant, self-centered, power-hungry prick. Since the Uchiha massacre he's been treated as Kami's personal gift to the world. People give him personal training from various Chunin. He feels everyone should bow to the might of the Uchiha and all others are beneath him. To be honest Izan-chan, if he keeps his attitude I do intend to kill the fletchling, as I've read that once he reaches of age and awakens the Sharingan to the next level they'd make him the next Hokage and use his eyes to keep me in control and waging an all-out war with Konoha at the reins," he said, seeing her frown before nodded, reading the bit on using Sasuke to breed more complacent Uchiha to follow the Leaf Village's whims like some loyal lapdog. He turned his focus to the two masked women as they hopped down, now standing with him at their chest height. He said, "But one thing comes to mind. If your focus is to get the Jinchuriki, why mention all this to me? I mean, you could have extracted the 9 tails from me and do what you intend to, since you already got the other 8. And why is it that the two of you are staring at me so intently?" The redhead said, "Why would you think we're staring at you?" He shrugged, saying, "During this whole conversation you two have been staring at me rather closely, for what reason I don't know. But the two of you have been staring so intently I think I'm developing burns on where you've been looking." The two looked at each other when the redhead asked, "What do you know about your family relations, and what exactly makes you an Uchiha and Senju?" Raising an eyebrow, he said, "My Senju blood comes from my dad's side of the family, as he is the great-grandson of Tobarama Senju and civilian woman named Kara Namikaze." "And your mother's side?" the dark-haired woman asked. "My Uchiha blood originates from my mother Kushina Uzumaki, who is the granddaughter of Kurigami Uchiha and Akatsuki Uzumaki," he said before the dark-haired woman said, "She's my great-granddaughter to be correct, and yes, Kazuki was a loving man, you almost look like him," she said, removing the mask showing the supposedly deceased Kurigami Uchiha with her M's active, making him go wide-eyed as he looked at the redhead, only for his heart to stop. Before him was a red-headed woman with a heart-shaped face with a Sharingan that had a red mosaic of a sun with a black lotus on the front, with both on a black background. She hugged him, saying, "I've missed you so much, Naruto-kun." Wide-eyed he said, "But I checked the place you were buried. How?" Kurigami said, "It helps when you know the blood clone to take a person's place. With her being weak from birth, it would be impossible to defend herself and you from the village, and who knows what depraved things they would do to her, so when everyone had yet to get to you all, I took her to heal and train her." He nodded as Kushina said, "Oh my baby boy, look at what they've done to you, taking away your beautiful red and black hair." Brushing her fingers across a seal on his scalp, she destroyed it, causing his hair to change, growing down to his lower back, as it was spiky, with it having black streaks while the rest was predominantly red. Even the marks on his face were changed to being rectangular and black, as his complexion changed slightly as his skin lightened to where his tan was barely noticeable. His Sharingan also forcibly activated as it bled, turning into red 6-pointed shuriken, then grew a black 3-pointed star as he shuddered. "And that is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced ever. But how did the seal affect my Sharingan? It only affects my appearance?" he asked, getting a shrug from the two. Getting serious, Kurigami said, "Now to tell you about why we're after not only you but the Biju as well. Now it is true we want the tailed beast, but it's to make a new Jubi which will be contained." He raised an eyebrow on his now stoic face, saying, "But this includes me how? I mean, I know I have the DNA of all 3 clans capable of containing a Biju, but what makes me so important that neither you, Mom, or even Izan could take the position?" He raised a good point. Many of them thought, as all 3 are from the same clan and both had an ability to control the tailed beast. "You're the linchpin because you are the direct descendant of the sage himself. All you need to do is awaken that blood in you to increase those strengths," Kushina said, getting an understanding nod from him. "Okay, I can see your point. But one thing," he said, getting a raised eyebrow. "What is it, Naruto-kun?" Kushina asked. "What are the odds things could go wrong? I mean, you're taking a Biju that's been inside me since birth, practically saturating my chakra with Yukai to where it's nearly 80% Yukai, if not more so. What could stop me from, oh I don't know," he paused, thinking. "Maybe going up like a pile of explosive notes," he shouted as his head grew to that of the Gedo Mezu statue, making the women sweat drop. "I guess Naruto-kun learned how to use Iruka's big head jutsu," Izan said, remembering Iruka, who was another one of his guards along with her, who took their job seriously, as he made quite the impression on them as a child. With both of their hair blown back, wide-eyed Kurigami said, "There's nothing to worry about, as we've spent years preparing for this. Just leave everything to us and we'll handle everything." He looked them both in the eye before relenting as he said, "So what all do I have to do?" The last thing he saw was of the 2 Uchiha before his world turned to black. Kurigami said, "Now let's get him into the statue. It's going to take the rest of the day and then we're going to train him." They nodded as they removed all things of use from him and tossed him in the statue as the last eye opened. "Will he be okay?" Kushina asked, getting a comforting pat on the shoulder from her fellow Uchiha. "Oh, if he has your never say die attitude, then he'll be fine. But when he's stable enough, we're training him for the finals. I'm sure you'd love to see your son hand everyone their asses on a platter, right?" she said, getting a grin as a response. "That's my girl," Kurogami said with a small grin as she wrapped an arm around Kushina's shoulder before they went to perform the same series of hand signs as the eyes all started to glow white. Hours later. I see passing out is going to be a normal occurrence just so long as I don't wake up naked with a hangover in another woman's bed. I still owe Anko-chan for that," he said, coming to with a hand to his head before he covered his ears due to the increase in noise. "Can someone tone it down?" he said as the noise died down. When he opened his eyes, the place was in shambles. The statue was destroyed from the head up with craters and scorch marks everywhere. When his eyes landed on them, he went wide-eyed as everyone was injured with a few claw wounds. "What the fuck happened here?" he said, alarmed as they turned to him. "Well, you see, when the process finished there were a few unforeseen accidents," Kushina said with a sheepish grin before she shrank back at the glare. "Yeah, I see the craters and the destroyed statue, but that doesn't answer why you all look like you just came back from war," he said, seeing them all shift uncomfortably. "Anyone going to speak? You're starting to freak me out, and why does everything seem off?" he said as Kushina said. "You see, Naruto-kun, the process went without a hitch, except you didn't become the Jinchuriki for the 10 tails. She started making him raise an eyebrow. "If things went without a hitch but I didn't become the Jubi's Jinchuriki, what happened then?" he thought before he felt something brush across the ground, making him turn around and see something black with red lines running across it as he grabbed it, only to flinch when he felt his hand touch the furry object. Reaching for it again, he felt his hand grip the object as he traced the object from where he was grabbing down to see it coming from his spine with 9 others next to it as his eyes widened. "What the hell?" he said, grabbing his sword that was stabbed into the ground next to Masamune. As he looked at his reflection, his eyes were like Mayu's, except the space between the rings were black, as the rings were a royal purple with red tomo equaling 9 total, and on top of his ears were 2 wolf ears. They turned when Kurogami said as they tried to catch the sound. As Kushina said, "There was a bit of a hitch. You didn't become the Jinchuriki, but you became the Jubi thanks to a blunder on our side during the hand sign process. When some of us went for Inu, we used Tori." Focusing chakra from his eyes, the rings constricted, turning white as they glowed. He said, "So I became the Jubi instead. I'm the descendant of the sage and the second 10 tails. This is fan-fucking-tastic." Seeing them give him worrying looks, he said, "I'm fine, so what are we going to do now?" "I mean, I've got to prepare for the Chunin exams in 2 months starting tomorrow, as tomorrow is the start of the 2-month waiting period." Kurogami said, "It's obvious you are still a genin even though you're already a high A rank low S rank shinobi, but with your new abilities it's going to take some time to grow accustomed to your new senses and skills, mostly the uses of your M's and these new eyes." Hisaya said, "So what are you going to call M?" "I mean, they're a mix of all 3 dojutsu with a hell of a boost, especially with your transformation." Seeing him tilt his head with his eyes closed made the girls find this to be rather cute as his ears flattened while his tail swayed back and forth. "I'll call them the Tengoku no Mi, Heaven's Eye," he said, reactivating them as they changed back when he focused more and activated the M's, causing the symbols in his eyes to grow, with the shuriken being white with the star being black. "A little arrogant, don't you think?" Katsu asked, getting a raised eyebrow from him. "Hey, it was the first thing to come to mind. You get any better ideas?" he asked, getting a negative from them all, getting a smirk from him in exchange. Clapping her hands, Kurogami said, "Now that the naming is out of the way, we're going to work you into the ground, Naruto, so be prepared, because starting tomorrow we will personally introduce you to hell." All of them had a small sense of satisfaction seeing his face lose color slightly before telling them all to get some rest as to prepare for his training. Naruto was about to head to the room he was sleeping in when Kushina grabbed him by the shoulder and dragged him towards her room, getting odd looks from the others before Kurogami came to her great-granddaughter's defense. "Hey, don't give her that look. Kushina's been denied 16 years of her son's life. 16 years she'll never get back, and besides, you know he is the last male of the Uchiha, Senju, Namikaze, and Uzumaki. If she wants to bear his children, it's her choice," she said, watching him walk with her. "Hell, I've seen the way all of you ogled him. I may just join in if he'll have me. Maybe even Azukage-sama will want a piece of him," she said with a grin, seeing the girl's colors slightly before she vanished in a swirling vortex. Kishi looked at Mayu and said, "So how big is he?" Not even looking at her, she created a chakra rod and said, "That big." Before they could pester her more, she walked away with her blue-haired companion as the others went to their rooms as well to plan out the new Jubi's training schedule. Kushina's room. Oh, this is so great getting to hold my son again. I haven't done this since you were just a baby. Kushina exclaimed happily as the two of them were in her bed with her wearing a pair of loose sweatpants and a low-cut shirt as she held her son. He was blushing as he had his arms around her waist with his tails wrapped around her as well, but the reason he was blushing is because his mother was pressed up against him with her chest against his. I'm happy to have my mom around too, he said, looking down with his eyes glowing in the dark, which she was thankful for as her blush was intense, feeling his muscles. Oh my god, he's so fucking toned, and his chest, I just want to feel him against me like this in forever, but he's my son. Although I haven't done anything to be considered motherly to even register as a mother in his eyes, she thought sadly before feeling his breath on her, causing her to look up as he was unconscious. She brought her face closer to his till they were an inch apart before stopping. I can't, he's my son. Although Konoha did take away our chance to be a mother. He might not feel the same. You won't know unless you try, bitch. I guess one peck won't hurt, of course not, and if he likes it then he likes it. After all, when we revealed ourselves his eyes didn't leave our body till we hugged him. Closing that final distance, her lips lightly connected to his own before she wrapped her arms around his neck with one leg coming over his until she felt something pull her closer as he deepened the kiss, making her eyes widen as she saw Naruto's eyes were now wide open. Separating, he said huskily, even though we can't be mother and son, I would be happy to be with you, Kushi-chan, but how about we get to know each other, huh? With tears in her eyes she nodded, kissing him repeatedly as she continued to tell him how much she loves him before resting her head on his chest with one of his arms being wrapped around her waist to bring her closer as the two fell into a blissful sleep. Hello my new notebook, it's Naruto here. The girls thought it would be a good idea to write stuff down, be it random thoughts to ideas and reminders, so I figured I'd give it the old Uzumaki try and see where this goes. Over the time of my transformation and joining of the Akatsuki, I got to know the girls and my great-grandmother and mother. To be honest, they're all amazing women with quite some backstory as they all put me through the ringer while training. But it wasn't all that bad, especially when they caught me playing some music which they insisted I do more often as they fell in love with my voice, which was rather embarrassing. During the first month the girls said I was already high A to low S in skill, but with my training as I was already skilled in Kenjutsu and Taijutsu, but now from Kushi-chan and Kurigami-heim they said I could now throw S-ranked jutsu around like they're going out of style. Mayu-chan started to train me in the Rinnegan's abilities and the ability to animate bodies to use as they would have use of one of the paths, as she demonstrated when she had me attack with a jutsu and had one absorb it. Hisaya-chan took to teaching me how to use a scythe, which I learned rather easily and made a blade that turned into a scythe. Katsu-chan even took to teaching me old jutsu that haven't been seen since the Third War. Kishi-chan took to training me further in Kenjutsu and water and wind jutsu, which were common in the Mist Village. Konan-chan, a blue-haired beauty, taught me to be calm in combat and use my opponent's anger against them, as she said, an angered opponent is an easy opponent. And that was the truth. If you could get under your opponent's skin or bring them down, the battle would sooner turn in your favor. Kushi-heim being the Uzumaki, she was trained me in Fuinjutsu and the use of the Uzumaki Kenjutsu and Taijutsu style, and even went as far as to have me sign both the cousin contract to her Hydra summons but also Dad's clan summons as well, although with me having the sage's fabled Rinnegan I could always sign more, at least that's what Mayuheim told me. After he started learning from them, he had some clones stay behind to train in their arts and senjutsu from the clones' memories. During the second month I'm going to have my work cut out for me. She even went to train me in our Uzumaki special chakra and use of the chakra chains that was a pain in the ass to learn, but it's useful to use when restraining an enemy and draining them of chakra. Yuri-chan trained me in stealth and poisons, which admittedly I was fairly good in. I mean, I am by no means a professional but adept enough to make some pretty effective poisons and neurotoxins. Izan-chan and Kurigami-chan trained me in the abilities of the Sharingan and the use of Kaiden Jutsu as well as the Uchiha Taijutsu style. Samiko-heim trained me in the use of puppetry, which while it's something I doesn't use as it doesn't seem to fit my style, it got me thinking of different ways to use a puppet. I wonder if that would work anyways? And lastly, Deidria-chan trained me in tactics. While getting under your opponent's skin was a good thing, it wouldn't do you any good if they had the advantage because your opponent knows the landscape and every vantage point that came with it. She had a saying, keep your opponent on edge and keep them unaware. You do that and keep them moving so you're getting them to where you want them to be. Of course I didn't just train in the basic stuff, but I made my own form of technique. It is with the use of the creation of all things I could make blades out of my chakra and spiritual energy that I called soul blades. I still had a few kinks to work out before they could be considered combat ready, so I decided to practice it as much as he could so they could see combat and have shadow clones work on that while I was training with the others. And lastly, I also trained Dad's Hireishin to the point neither the kunai nor the marker were necessary and used my Ryotsu to make a variation of that called the shunpo or flash step. And made techniques that required no chakra or hand signs he likes to call Kido. It seems have been coming up with some interesting ideas, and since it's spiritual energy which when focused with killer intent it is rather impressive effect and intimidation tactic, as Kushi told me that it feels like the Shinigami was gripping at her heart and made it difficult to breathe. Apparently when I use it the force that hits them practically brings them to their knees. Some of them say I could kill them just from enough pressure alone. I decided to call this spiritual pressure since unlike killer intent that affects the mind, spiritual pressure hits the soul. Another thing I am immensely grateful for is the fact that they got me clothes that don't make me look like a walking neon sign. I was so grateful that I gave all of them a deep kiss, which I think they were rather grateful for as well. Yeah, this fox still got it, although I may need to place some anti-intruder seals just in case to my door. Looking towards my bedroom door in worry, seeing a couple pairs of eyes peek through a crack in the door. Those girls while S-rank kunoichi that could wipe out a village with no problem made me realize they are still women deep down when they crawl in my bed at night, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time. Not that I mind really. Although the girls seem to be far too comfortable with themselves, because when they join me in my bed some of them are either chose their underwear or nothing at all. It gets awkward when they somehow pull me into their chests. Never in my life save for Anko and the girls back home did I have a harder time controlling my hormones than this. Well, it seems I gotta go journal. My break for the morning is over, so I'll see you either tomorrow or the day after for another update. Yane. 2-month entry log. Sai, hey, my notebook of thoughts and ideas, your 10-tailed friend Naruto here. Man, when Kushi-chan said senjutsu training was a pain, she wasn't lying. The Leviathans are amazing, especially Suiren, water lilies, the daughter of the boss of the Leviathan contract, and Tigress, daughter of the boss of the Tiger contract. Those two were the first I ever summoned from those respective contracts. The Leviathans were a rather aggressive summons, even their taijutsu style is something to be afraid of, but their jutsu and kenjutsu were frightening to say the least. The White Tiger clan is a frightening sort with their taijutsu and bojutsu from what I've seen, while their ninjutsu were a close second comparatively. But both of their senjutsu training was by far the most difficult but uplifting. The natural energy makes me feel tranquil, like I'm finally at peace and had nothing to worry about. Both of the clans were happy that I became their summoner for a twofold reason. One being they haven't been summoned in generations. And the second being the Toads have been gloating about soon having me become their summoner or some such nonsense, being their child of prophecy. Yeah, right. Another thing I've come to see is that both daughters have some affection towards me, which their parents obviously noticed. You ever be given the "you hurt my daughter" speech from a creature 100 times your size and weight? It's scary as fuck, especially when compared to me. I'm the size of their fangs and claws. That does not instill confidence, and I'm 6 feet 4, so you can see where I'm going with this. But when I brought up the fact they're animals, their mothers, the bosses, told me all summons or the competent ones know how to form a human form, which they are even capable of bearing children, and all I can say about Suiren and Tigress is, to sum it up in a few words, hot damn. The two of them chose to become my familiars and were trained even further by their mothers to fight alongside me. And if they weren't training with their moms, they were training with me. And if we weren't training, we were eating together. And if we weren't eating, we were bathing or sleeping together. I have to admit, for their animal forms they were rather tall. Suiren was about a half of her mother's massive size, while Tigress came to about a little past her mother's stomach when she stood up. But they could shrink, so when we traveled they stayed on my shoulders or on a large scroll I keep on my back. The time it took to master both of their training was something, while intimidating for some, was a learning experience for me. Even their clans came to see me as family and to acknowledge my ascension to sage. I was gifted with a coat similar to my father's, except it was made from Leviathan scales, with it being black with sharp gray flames, and a sword made from Suiren's mother's claw she had dubbed Soanga El Long Katana, with a purple jewel at the end of the hilt. And from the tigers I was given a bladed lance made from Tigress's mother's fangs, as the blades at both ends retracted, while I kept it secured in a holster on the small of my back. I may keep all my weapons held by storage seals on my person. I'll think on it. Anyways, both the girls get along rather well too. I guess it's because like my girls back home they agreed to share me, or it's because they're predators. We also trained in combination techniques since Tigris had a wind and fire affinity, while Suiren had a lightning and water affinity. It's safe to say that's also a side project since we're still not quite in sync in performing jutsu that meshes 3 techniques together, especially with the fact I can use every affinity. Oh well, since their moms bonded them to me, their own chakra reserves have grown rather well. I mean, they were already pushing Chunin in reserves, but now they had enough to compare to a tailed beast in the amount they had. Another thing, the 2 of them are very clingy and territorial when it comes to me. A few of the female summons tried coming on to me and that resulted in getting attacked. Hee hee, oh man, that was an admittedly funny sight. On a serious note, their mothers told me that when the toads find out about me being their summoner there may be conflict. Although I have doubts about the toads winning against them since they are stronger than the toads and snakes in terms of power. At this very moment Suiren and Tigris are waiting for me to join them in bed. And apparently the girls back home were messaged by the bosses telling them about the relationship situation and they don't mind, in fact they're happy. So better finish this up and get some sleep. I gotta leave bright and early tomorrow so I can make it on time for the Chunin exams. So till next time, oh journal. Ya nay, when is he getting back? He has to be at the stadium in a couple hours, Heisei said, getting a series of shrugs from the others when a poof of smoke caused them to look and see Naruto. He had grown to an impressive 6 feet 4 with his hair done in a braided ponytail reaching his lower back, with his bangs coming down his now fat-free face, with some of it coming over his eyes nearly blocking them from view as he gained aristocratic features with a feminine quality, as his eyes were now white without his usual black sclera which was concealed by a genjutsu. He wore a pair of black Anbu-style pants with black tape that was wrapped around his feet, and a gray muscle shirt with a sleeveless purplish, black high-collar zip-up kimono top with a deep red rope-styled belt done around his waist, holding the sheaths of his tensa zanjetsu and masamune on his left hip in a special sheath that held the entire blade thanks to a seal he created. Along his legs were several pouches full of kunai and shuriken with another set of pockets holding different tags. On his right hip was a large sword that had a purple jewel in the hilt of the sword, showing his mastery of the Leviathan contract, with a serpent-style tattoo flowing on his right arm. On his left hand was a seal holding his guy-bold-bladed spear with his black trench coat with silvery white flames that resembled scales, with a large scroll on his back that was gray with a white tribal design of a tiger and Leviathan on his back. On the scroll was an orange tiger the size of an adolescent tiger with brownish-yellow eyes holding a strong gaze, and a blue-gray Leviathan with gold eyes and a third eye on her forehead resting on the other end that coiled itself around the scroll, while on his left arm was a seal holding his special sword, scythe combination weapon. Grinning he said, "Sup ladies, you miss me?" They all smiled before each of them gave Naruto a kiss when Kurogami said, "Welcome home Naruto-kun, before you left I wanted to give you this." Pulling out a large black gunbai with 2 sets of 6 white rings on both sides with a seal that connected to his chakra, allowing him to create a rope. Handing it to him he said, which he promptly sealed away in a scroll in his pouch, "This is amazing Kurogami-heim, thank you." She grinned before getting serious. "That's good to hear Naruto-kun, since I made it from the same materials used for mine. Now I wanted to give you some limitations." He nodded as Tigris shrank before jumping to his shoulder as Kurogami said, "First, you are limited to only the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. The Byakugan and the combination of all 3 are forbidden, although the Rinnegan gives the same abilities of the Byakugan, so that's partially why I'm forbidding you from using it. Nobody knows about your heritage, not even the Hokage. So if they call you into the chambers and ask, just say since you were born an orphan nobody knows who you got it from." He agreed, relenting to that as she continued, "Next, you're limited to the Mangekyo aspect of the Sharingan. And lastly, you cannot use your new experimental technique unless it's absolutely necessary, but Sage Mode is forbidden for the time being. Everything else is permitted. Yes, the Rasengan and Hiraishin included. Whatever excuse you use for it is fine, since the Rasengan is a simple chakra control exorcise and the Hiraishin is a take on Fuinjutsu." Again he nodded before he was kissed on the forehead as he was given an Uzu headband with a black cloth that he wore around his neck out of view under his high collar, as it was also hidden by a well-placed genjutsu, while his leaf headband that had a scratch across it that was concealed with an illusionary seal, making it seem normal. Before he left he said, "Quick question, how did you all get the biju for this in the first place?" I mean the villages had to have noticed something if the Jinchuriki went missing. Kushina said, we just went to the Biju's resting places before they were sealed and grabbed something that came from them that contained all of their energy like a fang or claw or scale. Everything contains a soul even if it's a fragment which over time would cause those fragments to gain their own consciousness. He nodded saying, thanks well wish me luck girls I've got a tournament to win. Flashing out of the cave Heisei said, he's going to slaughter them isn't he? The others nodded when Yurei created a giant screen making them all turn to her making both halves shrug. We thought everyone would like to see Naruto-kun fight in the finals so we created several clones to act as eyes and ears in the village to show us everything. They nodded watching him appear at the outside of the arena as he made his way inside. Konoha Chunin Exam Stadium. Will Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please come to the center of the stadium? I repeat, will Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please come to the center of the arena? Genma shouted as Neji stood in the center with a smug face. It seems Uzumaki has failed to arrive so Neji, he started after announcing the match when he heard. And I wasn't even given a 10-second warning makes me wonder if the Uchiha would have been given a whole 4 rounds to get here if it were him. They all heard making them turn to see Naruto standing next to Neji with a blank expression making the women in the arena blush while Neji and Genma jumped as he just appeared out of nowhere. Name? He asked making Naruto give the same blank expression making chills go down his spine as he was given predatory glances from the tiger and Leviathan next to him. Come now Gemna-san, what other 16-year-old Leaf Genin has whisker marks on their face? He said blandly making him nod before looking at the Hokage who nodded. Then the first round of the Chunin exams will now commence between Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga, fight. He announced as he shunshined away. The two squared off as Naruto took off his coat as he had Tigress and Suiren go to the side of the stadium with his scroll. A change of appearance makes no difference. You may as well submit now, you are destined to fall at the might of the Hyuga as the failure you are. Neji said arrogantly watching Naruto crack his neck getting loud sickening pops before he vanished from everyone's sight when Neji got launched into the wall. Wide-eyed everyone turned to see Naruto with his hands clawed like his feet as his hands were smoking with his palms extended. He said, please Neji, if all you're going to do is flap your gums then give up now and not waste my time. It makes me wonder if that's the only thing your clan is good for anyways really. Getting up Neji charged with his Byakugan active as he tried to hit Naruto's Tenketsu as Naruto slapped away each attack or danced around him continuing to get under his skin even more. I'm waiting for you to make a blow Hyuga. I would have believed a prodigy would be better than this but I guess they would give even a brain-dead fish the title these days really, Naruto said with his eyes closed continuing to dance around each strike when one landed making him smirk before it fell when Naruto went up in an explosion pushing him back with his clothes singed. I would have thought the almighty Hyuga's clan had no blind spots. Either you're posturing these things or are you all just that sad to fall for a simple Bunshin Daibukuha, great clone explosion. This truly isn't as fun as I was expecting it to be, Naruto said disappointingly while inside he was satisfied to see Neji's face turn red with fury. Shut up, he exclaimed as he blindly charged at Naruto as he didn't notice the growing grin. Akatsuki base. Naruto-kun sure knows how to get under someone's skin. I've never seen a Hyuga's face get so red, Katsu said as the others agreed with her when Naruto delivered a clawed hand across Neji's chest. Chunin exam stands. Sensei, what style is Naruto using? Tenten asked as Guy said watching Naruto move. That style is one that helped give birth to the Iron Fist and even the Inuzuka's taijutsu. The tiger style, he said getting everyone watching's attention. What? Kiba exclaimed watching Naruto not take a single blow while Neji was continuously beaten around like a rag doll. That's right. The tiger style was an old-style taijutsu that hasn't been seen since the sage's reign. Channeling the primal fury of the tiger, one can deliver devastating blows and graceful evasion. In fact, the tiger style was the first of the styles to exist and feared as a single strike while his hand is the way it is could cleanly tear out your throat. He explained making everyone go wide-eyed learning the Dobi knew such a style. But wait, that still doesn't explain how he has such skill or his change in appearance and what's with those animals that are just sitting there, Ino said as they turned from the fight which was obviously one-sided to see the tiger resting on the scroll and code with the Leviathan coiled up. They could be summons. Where he got them from we may never know, and as for the transformation, he could have awoken some form of bloodline. As for the rise in skills, it could be that he had skills to begin with but chose to keep them hidden for such a moment like now, Asuma said, watching Naruto laid Neji on his back for the 100th time. Back on the floor. I have to say you're rather pathetic, Neji. What happened to that Hyuga greatness you would go on about? I mean, earlier you said I would be at your feet, but it seems the sandal is on the other foot, huh? Why don't you save yourself any more embarrassment, or you can continue while I tear another couple pounds of flesh from you for hurting Hinataheim? Naruto suggested, getting a snarl. And what's so special about that failure? She's weak, she couldn't even protect herself against from a Kumo ninja, he exclaimed when he was kicked across the face when Naruto planted his foot on his chest, slowly cutting off his oxygen. Yes, and here's the standing question. How is it a 3-year-old's fault for being unable to defend herself against a 20-something Chunin with combat experience in spades? How is it her fault, Neji? Or better yet, let me bring up my own questions and we'll see if you can answer those, okay? He asked, not noticing Neji was starting to lose consciousness. How is it possible that a clan of 100 clansmen minimum with eyes that could see through walls were incapable of noticing her kidnapping until he was nearly in Lightning Country? I mean, someone had to have noticed something, unless your clan is as blind as you are ignorant, because I find it highly unlikely that your entire clan were incapable of noticing anything until the last minute, he said as he sighed before Naruto kicked him across the ground by his head, making Naruto drop his head in disappointment. It seems Neji can't continue anymore. You going to call the match? He said, looking at Genma, who was slightly intimidated by the cold look in those silvery white eyes, before nodding. Why, yeah, winner of the first rounds of the Chunin finals, Naruto Uzumaki, he announced as everyone booed while the daimyo and visiting dignitaries frowned, hearing the slurs and insults as everyone started to call him demon, especially the water daimyo and fire daimyo, who heard about his exploits in Wave. The water daimyo said, "This is quite shameful to have a village treat a young ninja with such discontent, isn't it, Menace?" The fire daimyo nodded with a sigh. Yes, and you wouldn't believe the shameful actions I've heard about in a little book a plant woman gave me about the happenings here. After one thing, I've already made my decision, at least when I settle something after the exams, when Sarutobi and I have a chat. The water daimyo nodded as she said, "I would like to sit on this meeting if that's fine. The boy shares a strong resemblance to an old friend of mine. And if they are treating him worse than what we see on the surface, I may just ask you to move him to a recently rebuilt village." He nodded, watching Naruto walk back up the stairs with his coat and summons on him as they made their way to the contestants' booth, when the fire daimyo said to his side, "Kai, I need you to keep a close eye on the black and red-haired boy, but stay hidden. This village is acting strange and I want to understand why such a promising boy is treated so poorly." The black-masked ninja nodded after dropping to the ground before vanishing as he said again, "And Zane, stay near Sarutobi. What that boy said about special treatment makes me cautious. If he does attempt to give the Uchiha special treatment, then tell him I will take away 30% of their funding for such conduct." A blue-haired male nodded before vanishing as the man sighed as the water daimyo chuckled softly. "A daimyo's work is never done, huh, old friend? They never are, they never are," he said as the woman next to him gave a barely traceable smile before watching the next fight between Shikamaru and Temari, resulting in the Nara to forfeit at the last minute. Cage booth. Lord Hokage's Sasuke Uchiha and Kakashi Hatake has yet to return. What should we do? A random Chunin said when Sarutobi was about to speak. They heard. Then he should be disqualified. If he can't be on time for a fight, then he isn't mature enough to advance through the ranks. Turning, they saw the same blue-haired shinobi as Sarutobi glared. "Who are you to tell me what to do with my ninja?" Sarutobi demanded when he showed his Fire Country insignia, the same insignia his son wears. Personal guard to the daimyo Zane Arisawa's sulfur monosulfide ranked ninja of Kusa. He saw young Uzumaki about to be disqualified, even though the rules state he has to be given a window to appear on time. Your ninja disregarded this and almost deemed he forfeited his place if the boy didn't come the moment he got there, he said, making both the cage tense. And Lord Menace said if you give this Sasuke boy special treatment, then the village will lose 30% of his funding for favoritism, he explained blandly as he stared the aged cage down before he relented as Zane turned to the floor. "So tell Genma that the Uchiha has forfeited his place and get on to the next match," he said impatiently to the unnamed Chunin, who nodded before joining Genma down below as they announced the results, with the crowd booing as Sarutobi growled silently, much like the cage. Contestants booth. "You know, I can't help but wonder what a masked ninja that isn't Anbu doing here," Naruto said silently while scratching Tigress's ear as she turned into putty as she draped herself across his lap, purring. He heard next to him softly, "Lord Menace wanted me to keep an eye on you and learn of your life here in the village, as he grew curious due to the actions of the populace here and how they acted when you won." Naruto nodded, handing him a slip of paper. When he heard his name being called after Shino's opponent forfeited, he said, "Go to the hospital and go into the document room. I have my own storage there. It holds all my info if your daimyo is curious, although you may want to stay near the Hokage for the time being. I get a funny feeling coming from the cage and it isn't the warm and fuzzy kind." Patting Tigress on the head, she got up as she hopped on his shoulder as he sealed away the scroll before they vanished in a burst of sound, missing the chuckle. "Kid's got style, I'll give him that much." Stadium grounds. The next match will now commence between Naruto Uzumaki and Subakunogaara. Fight. Genma started when a large wind kicked up as leaves swirled around when it started to clear. Akatsuki base. "Hey Izan, isn't that your brother?" Kishi asked, getting a groan from the elder sibling, who watched as her brother emerged back to back with Kakashi wearing a pair of Anbu-styled pants with calf-high sandals, wearing a white kimono top with opera-style fingerless gloves with a purple rope-styled belt, holding a chikuto as he stood there smug. "Oh dear Kami, please don't remind me," she groaned, getting a snigger from her partner while Kurigami shook her head in her hand. "I think he decided to come at the wrong time because Naruto-kun and Gaara aren't too pleased," Mayu said, watching the screen when they all looked to see Naruto's eyebrow twitched while the rest of his features remained bland. Gaara, on the other hand, had a dangerous glare aimed at Kakashi and Sasuke as Kakashi was looking at his smut as Heisei commented, "I'm rather interested in watching those two crash and burn." They nodded before returning their focus to the screen. Stadium grounds. "Are we late?" Kakashi asked when Genma nodded, pointing to Naruto, who had an equally bored expression as Gaara had. "Yes, actually Lord Hokage was told to disqualify the Uchiha because he couldn't bring himself to be on time for his match. In fact, your appearance is interrupting your last student's match," Genma said as Kakashi said. "Naruto?" he asked, watching Naruto slowly turn his focus to the Chunin before Naruto groaned audibly before nodding. "You wouldn't mind giving your spot to Sasuke, would you?" he asked, getting a snort from Naruto. "I would mind actually. If you weren't such a useless case and didn't let your porn or the fledgling's ego blind you too, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So yes sensei, I do mind, since after all Sasuke and Sakura are the only reason I'm here, since the exams require a team of 3. You remember those words, don't you sensei?" Naruto asked with a slight smile before he was gripped firmly on the shoulder by Kakashi, making Naruto look on with a bored expression. "I didn't say it as a request, Genin, it was a demand. Now leave the field," he said when he felt something grip his throat to see Naruto's white eyes narrow into slits. "Or we do it this way, Hitaki? Since you just embarrassed the village in front of visiting dignitaries and daimyos who formed treaties with us and gave them the impression that such actions as yours are allowed." He started, making Kakashi go wide-eyed, seeing Naruto's eyes turn red with 3 tomo. "You get your second Genin and join your only remaining student and sit down and shut up, or I'll rip your throat out with my bare hand. The choice is yours," Naruto suggested, making him shiver from the killer intent before grabbing Sasuke and left the field. Akatsuki base. "Alright Naruto-kun, that's telling him, TT Ebane," Kushina said, jumping up and down as the others sweat drop watching her reaction. "Your family is one odd bunch, Izan," Katsu said sympathetically, getting nods from the others while Izan groaned audibly. "Don't start," she said with a snort, looking at Stitch Job Kunoichi as the others sniggered. Stadium grounds. "Now that that's out of the way, we can begin, so just fight already," Genma announced as he left the field as Naruto dodged a spike of sand. "Hee not wasting any time, are ya?" "Fine, I was hoping for a real challenge," Naruto said as his Sharingan spun in excitement while Gaara grinned. "Girls, let's have some fun, shall we?" Naruto said, looking at Tigress and Suiren, who nodded when another spike came at them when a large puff of smoke came, blocking everyone's view. Arena stands. "What's going on, sensei?" Choji asked, getting a shrug from the bearded Chunin. "I don't know, Choji, but I'm more so interested in how he got this good." I mean from what I heard from Haruno, who bragged about their sensei shooting down Naruto, saying that the two of them were just stepping stones for Sasuke to get to the finals. If he didn't have a person to train him, how did he get this good? He asked when out of the smoke came Naruto with two women. The first had brick brown hair, as it was done short with her bangs framing her face, with two ribbons were done in her hair that made them seem like ears as they held two braids that hid behind the bangs. She stood slightly shorter than Naruto with tiger stripes on her body with two on both shoulders and two as they came around her brownish yellow eyes with two dots over those. She wore a sleeveless red karate top with black lining and a black and gold bamboo tree lining with black gloves and steel knuckles that had spikes on them. She also wore gray shinobi pants with a beige belt wrapped around her waist like the bindings wrapped around her legs with bandages done around her feet like Naruto's. The second stood slightly taller than Naruto with her steel gray hair done in a high ponytail that reached the middle of her back. While the other woman held a brutal elegance, this one had a natural beauty as she had light makeup on with black lipstick and soft gray eyeshadow around her gold eyes. She wore a sleeveless silver and blue styled Chinese style dress with a pair of gray tight pants with black slippers and a matching top underneath the dress, as both were carrying an odashi. "Wow, those two are cute," Choji said, getting nods from the men and the women admittedly as they watched the three brandish their weapons. Stadium floor. "Girls, I think it's time we got serious, huh?" Naruto said as they nodded, with Naruto taking off his jacket as it created a large crater before the three vanished when a wall surrounded Gaara, blocking Naruto and the others from landing an attack before they vanished again as wall after wall came up with every attempted attack. Reappearing, the three reconverged at the wall as Naruto looked to the others before nodding as he charged down the wall when two larger tendrils of sand came at Naruto, which he maneuvered under as he gave a straight punch as his fist connected to the wall as more spikes formed in the wall when Naruto vanished, appearing behind him as he kicked Gaara in the back of the head, launching him from where he was standing as Tigress gave him another blow, kicking him into the air. Suiren, who appeared above him, kicked him in the chest, pushing him down, with Tigress giving a double palm thrust on his descent when Naruto and the others fired a series of collaborative jutsu comprising of wind, fire and lightning, causing him to be caught in the center of a large inferno. Stands. Damn, whoever trained the kid sure did get him up to snuff. I mean, he was moving at Chunin level speeds there. And those jutsu he used haven't been seen since the last war. It's safe to say, Kakashi, you threw away a gem because this kid has some serious skill. I mean, he obliterated last year's Genin of the Year in taijutsu alone with the use of a single clone, and now this. If I had to rank him, he's at least in A rank," Asuma said, with the other Chunin agreeing with him while Sakura snorted. "Please, he's a weak clan less nobody and that's how he will stay," she said when Ino said. "If that's the case, then why aren't you down there then, Sakura? I mean, you make it seem you're stronger than him with your sensei's training, so surely you should be down there instead of him, right?" Tenten asked, making the pinkette hesitate. "Oh right, your sensei never trained you in anything while letting you and your team enter a dangerous field where the possibility of dying was outrageously high for the unprepared, and yet the clan less nobody is fighting while you're up here with those who couldn't make the cut," she continued, watching the pinkette put her head down. She snorted, saying, "Thought so," as everyone noticed Kakashi and Sasuke had their Sharingan active in an attempt to copy his techniques. Arena floor. "That had to do some lasting damage, right?" Naruto asked as both Tigress and Suiren shrugged when they saw him stand up from where he landed as flakes of sand chipped off him, causing Naruto's eye to twitch. "Right, sand armor. Forgot about that nifty little annoyance. I guess we're just going to have to hit harder then, won't we?" Naruto said, feeling a little put off by Gaara's deranged grin. Feeling the ground rumble beneath them, they jumped when Naruto was the only one to be caught in a large dome made of sand that slowly started to compress. Suna. Hanten Kushizashi, sand style. Inverted impalement, Gaara announced when the dome had large spikes come out from the outside as they started to collapse in, while Suiren and Tigress attempted to break down the others. In the stands. "Hey, the Dobi should have just listened to his betters and let me fight," Sasuke said as steam started coming from the dome. "I wouldn't start bragging just yet, boy," they heard, making them turn to see a black-haired youth wearing a mask with the Fire Country insignia on his vest. Shocked, Asuma said, "Kai? What are you doing here?" Turning his head, he shrugged. "Lord Daimyo seems to be rather interested in young Uzumaki, and I have to agree with your assessment earlier, Asuma. And as for your comment, boy, I wouldn't be so smug because you would have been in worse situations. Now I suggest you watch and see what a real warrior is." Pointing to the dome, they all saw it start to expand before it exploded by a large column of black fire before it died down, showing a Naruto who will forever be ingrained in their memories. His hair was disheveled as it spiked out with a bang coming over his eye, while his visual pupil had shrank to a pinprick as his fangs extended past his lower lip, with tiger strips forming around his eyes just like Tigress, while his Sharingan changed to a red six-bladed shuriken. Both of his shirts were slowly deteriorating from the black flames encasing his arms, while his pant legs were destroyed up to the shin due to the same fire. You see? That Dobi, as you all label him, has the potential of being a great leader who won't fall to his foe. That look of determination in his eyes is proof. I may just make a suggestion to Lord Menace to offer the boy a position of the 12 Guardian Ninja since you quit Asuma, he said, leaning against the railing. Sensei, do you know him? Ino asked, getting a nod from Asuma. Yes Ino, this is Kai Shen, Sulfur Monosulfide ranked ninja from Taki. In the 12 Guardian Ninja we have a ranking system, and with our rank he's number 2 while I was number 8. Honestly, Kai and Zane, who's ranked number 1, could easily handle an entire village of ninja on their own. I could be considered a high A rank capable of defeating at least a low S rank on my own, he said, getting wide eyes from everyone else. Nodding, Asuma said, so I take it Zane is the reason the brat didn't get to fight? Nodding his head, he said distastefully while looking at the Hokage. Yes, after hearing the comment Naruto made and seeing as Genma was going to disqualify the boy before he could be given a second call, Lord Menace figured to have a tight leash on things and gave everyone their fair shot to fight. The boy here didn't, because he and his sensei figured he was above the rules. Ignoring Sakura and the rest of Team 7's glare, he turned to the floor saying, now watch boy, you just might see what a real ninja is. Arena floor. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Tigress and Suiren asked as Naruto slowly tilted his head towards her with his Mangekyo spinning hypnotically when he extinguished a flame on his arm, showing he had scales coating them as he massaged her cheek with a slight smile. I'm fine girls, although I'm not too keen on losing my shirt and pants, he said as they sighed in relief. Now how about we finish this fight quickly, I just want to rest, but if Yuri is right, and with her info she is, then we're going to have some trouble on our hands, he said, ripping off the remains of his shirts leaving his chest bare. They nodded as Tigress got in the same stance as Naruto as her hands and feet were encased in blue fire, while Suiren pulled water from the air as it swirled around her. You two ready? He asked, getting another series of nods from them as Naruto charged forward, leaving a trail of black fire following him, while Suiren and Tigress destroyed every tendril that came Naruto's way as he got in close, using the heat to turn the sand into glass. Getting in close, he formed a seal on his unlit hand as 5 flames formed on each finger before he slammed it into Gaara's abdomen. Gogyo Fuin, 5-element seal. As Naruto thought the moment the fight was over, a barrage of feathers began to fall from the sky as Naruto, Suiren and Tigress focused their chakra and dispelled it. He said, Tigress, Suiren, I want you two to summon your clan's strongest to deal with the enemies in the village and to have them get the civilians to the bunker while the others defend the academy and the hospital. Try to get as little casualties on our side. They nodded before dashing off. He saw the same black masked ninja from before say, Kid, the village is under attack, do you think you can handle things here? He nodded, grabbing his Soanga and Tensa Zangetsu saying, give me a mission, I'll complete it. I'm going to take a guess and say you're going to assist the Hokage? He nodded as Naruto reached into his back pouch, giving him a seal saying, here then, you're going to need this. It allows you to displace a Kekai Fuin for a moment, allowing you to enter with ease for a short time. I'll get Lord Menace and Lady Mai to a nearby bunker. He nodded before grabbing the seal and ran to the cage booth while Naruto created an army of shadow clones to spread out around the village when Kakashi and the other ninja appeared. Naruto, what's going on and what did you give that man? It appears my hunch about Orochimaru was right on. He's impersonated the case cage in an attempt to kill the Hokage. I gave that man a seal I developed that will allow him to enter that barrier to assist the Hokage. For now let's not split hairs, we got an invading army on our hands and we got to defend the village, Naruto said as he started to go to the booth holding the daimyo when he felt Kakashi grip his shoulder. Now wait just a minute here, you're going to tell me what's going on, Genin, and you will show proper respect, Kakashi said when he was kicked in the side of his head, feeling Naruto's footstep on his chest as they all saw the air get thick with pressure that was rolling off Naruto. Everyone froze when they saw the look in his eye, while Kakashi was especially petrified as Naruto said, Firstly Hitaki, if you would get your head out of your ass you'd see that civilians are in danger. I would think your sensei taught you to deal with the important matters. Secondly, I don't have to explain shit to you since you've done nothing to make me consider it hell. You're struggling to breathe as is just from my spiritual pressure as is. Hee hee, Foxy-chan's funny. Kenny, is this Ni-chan strong enough? Everyone heard as they all looked around for everyone to be shocked as to a child who couldn't possibly be any older than 6 to 7 years old at the least. She had pink hair that was flat with a crossbone hair clip in her hair and dark pink eyes and a blush on her cheeks. She wore black pants with tape around her ankles and a deep red kimono top as she sat on his shoulder. Surprised at the fact of child got the jump on him, he was on edge, saying kindly, "Well sweetie, what are you doing here? It's dangerous, should I get you to the bunker?" She smiling. A large shadow started to cast over them all as they heard, "Yeah, this is the kid. The kid who has the eyes of someone who's experienced the darkness of the world but is willing to fight for his beliefs, kid behind you." Slowly he turned to come face to face with a large man's chest, making him look up as his eyes slowly widened. The man easily towered over him as he came to a staggering 6 feet 7 as he wore a pair of black hakama and a kimono top with a tattered white haori. His black stringer hair with a long scar over his green right eye as he had an eye patch over his left. On his shoulder he carried what little remains of the katana he had as it was chipped and jagged with a gold guard that extended inward from its center. Wide-eyed looked from the little girl who was smiling at him to the imposing giant staring at him as the gears clicked in place. He said, "No way, what's Kenpachi Zaraki and Yachiru Kusajinshi doing here? You know these people, Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, getting a nod from the boy as his eyes never left the giant. "No, not personally, but more so from their reputations in the bingo book as two S-class ronin. Although Yachiru-chan is possibly S-rank due to her connection to him or the fact she's killed several men just from her killer intent alone that got her the flee on sight order," he said as everyone stared at the 6-year-old child sitting on Naruto's head, patting him on the head with a smile with wide eyes. "But I'm curious as to why two well-known swordsmen are doing here in Konoha when you're normally known to stay in your territory in Tetsu no Kuni," Naruto said, watching the man grin before pointing his sword at him. "I saw the fire in your eyes during that fight. I want to fight you a fight to the death," he said with his grin still ever present while Yachiru nodded enthusiastically now on Hinata's shoulder. "Wait, why do you want to fight the Dobi when you can fight an elite?" Sasuke said with Sakura nodding while the others groaned audibly when Kenpachi cast him inside glance, making the boy step back. "Why would I fight a child who can't even stand in my presence?" Kenpachi said, watching the boy struggle to breathe, making the others snort. "I'd like that chance, but can we do it once we deal with the threat at the moment? We got to get the daimyos to safety and take out the other enemy ninja. Speaking of Kankuro, Tamari," he said when both Tsunade Genin came down with their sensei. "What did you do to Gaara?" Tamari demanded, checking over her brother. "I placed a 5-element seal on him. It seems whoever placed the last seal made him mentally unstable, so I was going to fix it after the exams, seeing as the seal was making it impossible to sleep," he said, getting raised eyebrows from the two swordsmen. "Can you talk ninja later and speak in a way for the ninja illiterate to understand?" Kenpachi asked, getting a nod from the little pink-haired youth now sitting on Anko's shoulder. To put it simply, whoever put the first seal on Gaara did a piss-poor job on maintaining it or overloaded the seal with too many commands and made him mentally unstable and incapable of going to sleep without going on a homicidal rampage as a result, he explained as the two started to nod. "I used another seal to knock him unconscious and keep him as such until I can fix his seal, so not only would he have better control over his sand but he could also sleep without having a mental breakdown or the insatiable bloodlust he's had," he said, getting an "oh" from the two as he kneeled next to Gaara as he got out his ink and paintbrush as he started to adjust it before finishing. Sitting back, his palm started to light with the same 5 flames again when he slammed it on the same space he did the Gogyo Fuin as he lifted Gaara and gave him to Baki, who nodded. "Alright Tamari, you and the rest of your team are to go to assist my summons at the hospital. Hinata-chan, do you think your team and Anko-chan can deal with any civilians my clones missed? I've got them spread around the village taking out enemy ninja," he asked, getting nods from the group of 7 before they ran out the stadium. "Guy, can you and your team get to the academy and make sure the kids get to the bunker? One of my clones were dispelled and they're in need of assistance," he said, getting a nod when he saw Naruto grab Lee and put him on his shoulder. "Where are you taking Lee?" Tenten asked, causing him to turn to her. Trust me when I say he's safer with me and the others. Don't worry, Lee is in perfectly capable hands, he'll be fine, now go. He said, getting nods from her sensei and later herself while Neji huffed. Asuma, I need you and your team to come with me, we need to protect Lord Menace and Lady Mai. Kenpachi, you and Yachiru are with us, we're going to need as much muscle as possible, he said as they all nodded while Zaraki had a sadistic glint in his eye. As they started to head to the daimyo's booth they heard, Naruto, Baka, what about us? Rolling his eyes he said, help around the village, it's more than likely buildings collapsed, make sure to get the injured out of harm's way and get them to the closest bunker entrance near your location. Running they all reached the daimyo's booth while ignoring the glares he received from his old team. Daimyo's booth. I hate to say this but I fear I'm getting old, I used to be able to handle myself easily, Menace huffed holding his bladed lance. I did say you lacked stamina, my friend, Mai said good-naturedly as she blocked a sword with a clawed gauntlet before slashing another at the throat with her dado. Yeah, smart ass, I get it, I'll get back to my training. He gripped as he ducked a sword strike to the back of the neck while he missed an enemy coming from behind him which was sent flying past him and Mai catching everyone's attention. Sorry to interrupt but we felt you could use the assistance, Naruto said, drawing his Tensazan Jetsu as the others soon followed as he put Lee down against a wall. Ah, Naruto Uzumaki, I have got to say I was rather impressed with your fights, Mai said as Naruto gave her an appreciative nod, thinking, with this many enemies here I may just be able to pull off a test run. You guys might want to take a few steps back just in case, Naruto announced as they complied as a purple-black energy discharged off his outstretched hand as he chanted. Sleeping crest of turbidity, arrogant vessel of lunacy, boil forth and deny, grow numb and flicker, disrupt sleep, crawling queen of iron, eternally self-destructing doll of mud, unite, repulse, fill with soil and know your own powerlessness. He chanted as Ino started before Choji slapped his hand over her mouth pointing at the enemy ninja, seeing black boxes starting to form around them. Hado number 90. Kurohitsugi, way of destruction number 90. Black coffin. He said as the enemies were completely inkazed when screams of agony were heard as when they dispelled what remained was the skewered remains of the enemies. Naruto, what the hell was that? Ino asked in both horror and intrigue at the technique as none of them felt the use of chakra but they felt some form of energy being used. I'll explain in a moment, he said, jumping in front of the two country leaders as a small house-sized fireball came bursting through the door as he extended his hands as to everyone's surprise he absorbed the fireball and threw a kunai at the man's head, killing him. Kneeling he clapped his hands above his head and again at waist level saying, Hachigyo Sogai, 8 joined twin cliffs. To everyone's surprise the room glowed yellow as they watched the enemy just ran past the room without even looking, getting raised eyebrows as his sensitive hearing he heard Ino's heartbeat speed up. Something wrong, Ino-chan? Naruto asked, opening one eye slightly when he saw her blush while looking at his eye and body. You don't have a shirt on, Naruto-kun, and your pants are pretty much non-existent, she said, making him raise an eyebrow before looking down to see she was looking at his 8-pack, making him chuckle. Yes, sorry about that, during my time training I would end up having my clothes destroyed so I just got used to not having clothes on. Hold on, he said, grabbing a scroll on his back pouch and released its contents, showing a spare shirt that was white with a purple-black high-collar zip-up kimono top and gray pants as he threw down a smoke bomb, letting him change. Alright, ask away, the enemy won't know this room even exists nor can they hear us, so ask any question, he said, examining Lee's arm and leg. First, what was that you just did? I didn't feel any chakra being used but it had a similar feel to it, and secondly, what is with your eye? It went from the Sharingan to some 6-pointed shuriken, then it turned purple and it got rings on it? Ino asked as she watched him continue to look over the injured genin. To answer your questions in order. What you sensed is an energy I call Riryoku, or spiritual energy. The reason it feels similar to chakra is because it is one half of the energy used for chakra. The two techniques I used fall under their own category. They all fall under the main category of Kido or Demon Way. He started as he created 2 clones to deal with Lee as they each tattoo his injured arm and leg. Pointing to the yellow energy that could be seen outside the door and the viewing balcony, he said, the first is Bakudo, or way of binding. Techniques that can immobilize an enemy or have an effect besides a direct strike. Pointing to the remains of the enemies, he said, then we have Hado, or way of destruction. These are attacks that deal damage. And lastly he pointed to the two clones whose hands were glowing green as they tended to Lee's arm and leg saying, and lastly we have Kaido or Turnway. They don't have names or incantations as they just simply heal the target. So you're healing him? If that's the case why didn't the hospital do it? Choji asked getting a raised eyebrow in exchange. I'll take a shot in the dark, you don't frequent the village save for your family's compounds or the high price district run by the civilians, he said getting nods from them all making him sigh. Well I'll put it simply the civilians fucked the village to hell as the civilians lined their pockets and waste the money used for the ninja and the shinobi stores and instead wasted on unnecessary things like hot springs in every civilian family home, he said getting a raised eyebrow from Asuma. And my father allows this, he said getting a snort as the ringed teenager looked at him. Asuma no offense but the title of Hokage, it just doesn't have the same worth as it did back during the Naidame and Shodame's reigns. Your father is a figurehead just making money for the village and hands out missions that's it and he knows everything that's going on and doesn't do anything about it, he said as he was grabbed by his collar into Asuma's face. And what's that supposed to mean you little brat? He demanded getting an uninterested gaze. Exactly as it means Asuma-san. I mean have you seen the way things are? Civilians have the ninja in their payroll doing senseless shit they could do themselves. I mean really painting fences? Pulling weeds? Yes, having highly trained killers are better used wasting several months doing someone's chores when we could spend it training and doing missions that could benefit the village and get in more pay. If they want someone to do it for the meager pay they got us working for then pay the children in the academy as a way to learn how to work with different people before they officially became genin or a kid looking to make some easy yen, he said as he grabbed Asuma's hands making him drop Naruto from how hard Naruto grabbed it. Brushing his shoulder he said as Ino blushed. Now getting back to the lovely blonde's second question. Now as for my eyes, my fair and lovely blonde. It was during the 2 months I've spent training I realized I had the Sharingan and Rinnegan, the Sharingan possibly from my mother's side of the family and the Rinnegan is a big question mark. What you saw was my Sharingan's second form, the Mangekyo Sharingan. Surprised Ino was about to say something when a puff of smoke came between them as a small white tiger cub appeared as it said, Naruto ni I have a message from Tigress Ne-chan. Smiling he said, what is it Byako? She says the enemy has began their retreat with that snake guy who was severely injured. The Sandame is injured but still alive thanks to those two masked ninja and that seal you gave that one guy to enter the barrier to assist them, the little tiger said as Naruto scratched behind its ear. That's good to hear. Where are Tigress and Suiren? Are things okay on their end? He asked getting another nod. Yes, they're still picking off leftover enemies. I'll summon them over to here when they finish up on their end, he said getting a nod before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Byako cute cub and Tigress's little brother named after the first white tiger of their clan we can all leave when they get here, he said when another seal array appeared when a larger plume of smoke appeared. It seems Naruto-kun's been having some fun huh? They heard an alluring voice say when the smoke dispersed showing Tigress and Suiren in the company of two older women who had a similar look to them. The first woman standing next to Tigress was taller than Naruto while she was slightly shorter than Kenpachi or at least to his shoulder. Her hair was snow white as it reached her knees with brown, blue eyes with a pair of tiger stripes under them. Her skin was porcelain white as she held a regal elegance. She wore an all-black bodysuit that hugged her features showing her curves while her feet and arms were bare and a red roped sash was around her waist. On her feet were a pair of equally red bandages like Naruto's and an ornate black oak bow staff. This was Ran Mao, queen of the Tiger Clan, as she gave a fanged grin that matched her daughter's. Next to Suiren was a woman who looked similar to her wearing a pair of black hakama and gray sleeveless tight Chinese top with gold lines spread across it. Her hair was a coal black that swept over her left eye while her right was an emotionless crimson red that made you feel like she was staring through you. Like Ran Mao, she held a similar regal appeal with a hint of poise that you'd see in someone of high social standing. On her hip were two long katana that were encased in a black sheath with a leviathan engraved in them. This woman is Shiva, the leader of the Leviathan and Suiren's mother. With an emotionless gaze as she looked around when it landed on Ino, she gave a soft smile which Ino returned it with a small wave added. So Naruto-kun care to fill us in on the situation? Shiva asked getting a nod as he told them of the events that had transpired as they listened before nodding. Alright, shall we go? We need to reach the Hokage tower, there is the closest bunker as we can reach, he said. They all geared up with Naruto placing his swords in their sheath when he dispelled the barrier, which Shiva had to whistle. I see you've got those Kekkaikido working, Naruto-kun, she said, getting a nod from Ranmao and the others as they all left the building. Outside the Hokage tower. It's not that far, only a couple of yards, Naruto said, running with the others following behind him when their way was blocked by a mob of Anbu and Konoha shinobi standing in the way to the bunker. Getting on guard, he said, you mind moving, we got to get Lord Menace and Lady Mai and lead to the bunker. We still got enemy ninja running around, and the sooner we can get them to safety the easier our job will be. They brandished their swords when a Chunin said, not happening, demon. You stopped Uchiha-sama from fighting and stole his clan's eyes. The Sandaime was a fool for letting you live, demon, and we will finish what Yondaime-sama started by fixing his mistakes. Turning his attention to the others, he said, keep them safe, I'll handle these guys. Ducking under a sword from an Anbu, he slapped an explosive note across his chest before kicking him into an oncoming group of shinobi, causing them to explode, making Shiva whistle, saying, maybe it would be best if we got out of his way. Come now, granted he's stronger than before, but I doubt he can single-handedly defeat a mob of Anbu and high-ranking Chunin on his own. He is still a Genin AC rank at the least, Asuma said when Ranmao pointed back to the fight, showing Naruto had already decimated several Chunin without drawing his weapons. I think that would say otherwise, Sarutobi. We've trained Naruto-kun for a month and he defeated the two of us who have had hundreds, nearly thousands of years worth of experience in combat. Now I suggest we move, she said, ducking under a flying kunai as they nodded. Jumping onto the nearest roof, they watched as he ducked and dodged them as he ripped their throats out, tossing them around as they hadn't noticed the roof was falling apart when Ino fell. Ino, Shikamaru said as she fell when a fireball came flying at her, making Naruto curse, thinking, let this work. Grabbing a tri-pronged kunai, he threw it in Ino's direction as everyone saw him vanish in a red and black flash, while Ino had her eyes shut, expecting for the jutsu to hit her when she opened her eyes to see Naruto standing in front of her with his arm bleeding heavily from the second fireball that followed the first. Looking back, Ino could see both his eyes as she couldn't help but stare at his cold, soft white eyes as they contrasted over their midnight black sclera before they changed to the Rinnegan, which she still found attractive, unable to fight the blush on her cheeks. His cold eyes softened as he said, you okay, Ino-chan? Nothing hurt? She shook her head, making him smile softly before they narrowed, before he turned his focus back to the mob who shook from the pressure coming from Naruto as a large wolf formed behind him with the same eyes as his. Slowly he drew his Masamune, saying, I could take you attacking me and that's fine, and I'll just take you down without problem. But involving someone who had nothing to do with this is a step over the line, since you wanted a demon. He closed his eyes as a large grin formed across his face. When his Rinnegan eyes opened halfway, he said, let me give you what you wanted. When it was completely unsheathed, he vanished in a burst of static as he reappeared behind another group as their heads fell from their shoulders, blocking several kunai before coming in quick. With a simple swing, he cut through an Anbu's sword before kicking him into another Anbu. With the others, you were saying? But I think I could come up with some titles for him. With those flames of his, he could be the Kurokami, Black God, Mai said, watching him create a wave of black fire and vanish in another black and red flash. The Shizukana Dai Konrin, Quiet Maelstrom, or the Igao Akuma, Smiling Demon. I mean, that smile is frightening along with that killer intent of his, Menace said when Ino and the others came back up as she asked. What happened to him? I mean, the look he has on his face isn't like the old Naruto I knew, she asked, watching him when Tigress patted her on the shoulder. That's the look of a person who's lived alone in a place that would rather see him dead than to have anything to do with him. In fact, the only people who actually like him is that Hinata girl, her sensei, and Anko, she said as Ino looked down, remembering their time in the academy, and saw he was always alone despite her father and mother's urging her to be his friend. She would talk to him from time to time, but her focus was always on the broken child Sasuke. Thinking back when she had asked Sasuke out one time in the academy, he told her after getting horribly chewed out and dismissed by Sasuke, Ino-chan, you could do better than someone like him. You, a beautiful girl who's going to make any man you end up with very happy, and if the Teme is too blind to see and acknowledge a beautiful flower, then that's his loss. She thought, maybe I could do better than that duck-haired bastard, couldn't I? She said quietly, getting Tigress and Suirain's attention, I don't hate him. She was cast a side glance by the two familiars for Naruto when Suiren patted her shoulder saying, "We know, also me, Tigress and the others know you like him and I'm willing to share if you want in." She blushed, getting a snigger from the two of them as they watched him dance around the mob, cutting them down one at a time with cold efficiency as no emotion was portrayed on his face. Is it me or is that jutsu what I think it is?" Shikamaru said, watching him slap his palm on a guy's chest when he kicked the man into the air as he vanished in a flash as they saw a familiar orb, except it was black with a white core. Slamming the first one into his chest, he was pushed into the ground when Naruto reappeared slightly above with another Rasengan. "In the name of a certain kunoichi. Art is an explosion. Rasengan Bakuhatsu, Rasengan explosion," he announced when he slammed the second Rasengan into his chest, causing a huge explosion to go off that looked like a giant black and white Rasengan. Pushing off, he landed on his feet with his outstretched hand pulling in Masamune. He said evenly, "Come on people. You said you wanted to finish what your beloved Yondaime started, finish it already." Afraid to continue, they ran when he created a blade of wind as it sliced through the rest of them, making him sigh in exasperation as he burnt the bodies, leaving nothing behind. Turning around, he was hugged by Ino, making his eyes widen before he gently patted her back saying, "Come on, we're not far from the bunker." They nodded as they all continued to make their way to the bunker, while Kenpachi couldn't help but grin at the thought of fighting him. Hokage's mansion. "Lord Menace," Zane said as he and Kai appeared in front of him as the others quickly joined them when Kakashi appeared. "Now I demand you explain things, Uzumaki," Kakashi said, getting an uninterested snort from him as he picked his ear with a nail before flicking it away. "Well, Genin, I expect you to answer," he continued as Naruto sighed before blasting him with killer intent, making him sweat. "First, Hitaki, I just got done fighting a mob of Anbu and Chunin who thought that since the village was in a state of confusion they would get away with trying to kill me, so I'd watch my step if I were you since I'm in a rather foul mood," Naruto said before letting up on his killer intent. Gathering himself, he turned to see the same man he saw leave from Naruto. Before confronting him, he said, What was it that my Genin gave you?" Not paying him any attention, Kakashi was about to strike him when Menace said, "And who are you to demand one of my guards, Leaf Ninja?" "I don't believe it concerns you, civilian," he said, not even paying attention when he was struck in the stomach by a black oak bow staff, making him heave. "That's the daimyo of Fire Country, fool. I suggest you show your country's leader the proper respect." "Now Naruto-kun, how's your arm? Is it still hurting?" Tigress asked, getting a shake of the head showing it was now slightly burned and slowly healing. "Hey, what happened to the dobi? He hurt himself being as useless as usual." Sasuke goaded when he was hit by Ino, making the other Leaf Ninja go wide-eyed. "Actually, he saved me from an attack by a mob of Chunin and Anbu when they attacked us. You should have seen him. He fought at least 30 Chunin and 20 Anbu with ease. When he blocked an attack for me, he demolished the rest like they were nothing," she said, making the Biju blush in embarrassment. "Ah, do you hear that, Naruto-kun? Seems like someone has a crush on you," Suiren taunted, making the two blush. "Naruto, how's Lee? Is he okay?" They heard to see Tenten and her team run towards them, allowing him to nod as he pointed to show Lee was being carried by Shiva. "Yes, Tenten, I told you Lee would be okay, and he is. In fact, I think he's going to be even better soon with some rest," he said with a smile, getting a raised eyebrow before he put his finger to his lips in a shushing motion before nodding. Yes, Naruto was quite impressive. In fact, I haven't seen skill like that since when Minato and I were on the same team back in the day. If he had spiky blonde hair, I'd swear you'd be a miniature clone of him," Menace said, getting a snort from Kakashi, who had regained his breath. "My lord, surely you're mistaken. Minato was my sensei. I know what the man was like, and there is no way this clanless nobody could measure up to him. Surely you saw someone else do those things because he can't do anything without screwing up," he said, getting a blast of killer intent. "I know what I've seen, and I've seen a boy with more skill than a war-trained shinobi. And I have to say I've seen just about enough from this village, and I've made my decision when I speak to Hiruzen later tomorrow. Naruto, my boy, I must thank you on behalf of Hai no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni for keeping us safe," he said, bowing as Mai did the same, making him wave his hands back and forth. "And no need for the bowing, I just did what any ninja would do." "There's no need to thank me," he said, getting a shake of the head from Mai. "But that isn't true. We've seen your skill, your ability to take charge and give commands, and the way you work with your summons and how loyal they're to you. she said, pointing to Suiren and Tigris who stood next to him along with their mothers. And it's safe to say you are by far a powerful shinobi who can only grow stronger no matter what village you're in. To be honest, if this village can't accept what a powerful ninja they have, then they don't deserve you. And I will say this, if you and anyone you take with you can rest knowing you have the protection of all of Mizu no Kuni behind you no matter what village you're in. She said, kissing him on the forehead as she walked away as she was followed by her guards. I have to agree with her, young man. You've done your nation a great service this day and I thank you. Rest well knowing if you decide to leave this village you have the support of Hai no Kuni behind you as well, he said, patting him on the shoulder before finding a place to rest for the evening since the chaos is over, while knowing it will only get worse. Naruto and his friends could only watch them leave while the Naruto haters shot hate-filled glares at him while he and the others yawned. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to find a place to sleep in. This has been an exhausting day. I don't doubt I'll have to deal with the council for something stupid. He groaned as Ran Mao and Shiva waved them goodbye as they returned to their realm while Tigris and Suiren followed him. Looking over his shoulder he said, and tomorrow I'll give you that fight you wanted, Kenpachi, after the council meeting. Most likely they're going to want to speak to me about my increase in skill. Although Kenpachi was disappointed, he nodded as he and Yachiru went to find a place to sleep. Come on Ino-chan, you can do it, just another 2 laps around the lake and we can get to the light training, Naruto said, getting a moan in disappointment as Naruto sat on a stump watching Ino Yamanaka run around the lake for the 5th time in a row as he wore a pair of loose white pants and a black muscle shirt. Come on Naruto-kun, I don't think I can run anymore, Ino said, huffing, wearing a pair of bike shorts and a purple tank top, running, getting a chuckle as she yipped as Suiren and Tigris chased her for the entirety of it. Oh Ino-chan, I know you can do it, all you have to do is believe in yourself. How about this, you do these couple laps, you can take a short break and as a reward after training I'll do whatever you ask. Naruto proposed, seeing the light in her eyes get brighter as she redoubled her efforts, effectively lapping Tigris and Suiren. Chuckling, he thought to himself, it's amazing how a possible reward can motivate a person depending on the reward. She came to him in the middle of the night last night asking him for help in her training as she wished to improve after her display during the preliminaries and the invasion, which he agreed to. Seeing her run the last lap he said, alright Ino-chan, you can take a breather and when you get your breath we can start the physical training and chakra control to see where you're at, but small question, do you diet? She nodded, huffing, getting a small frown from him as he knew the reason making him say, Ino-chan, you do know you're only hindering yourself by dieting, right? I mean that's fine for the civilian women, but the shinobi lifestyle will take care of that. But I don't want to get fat, she protested, getting a raised eyebrow from Naruto. Ino, in the academy I ate more than all the kids combined in my weight's worth in ramen, and did I look like I was fat? I mean Choji's is happily plump because it's in his clan's genetics to use their jutsu, he said as she thought about it. I mean look at Kurenai-sensei, Anko-sensei and many of the other female kunoichi, even the ones from the other villages. Did they look like they diet? All the fat you gain while training is distributed to help your body where it needs it, he explained as she looked down at her chest, remembering that Anko was pretty well figured and even Hinata had a better figure than she expected. Okay, so you make a good point, but what am I going to do? She asked, scratching Tigris behind her ears, getting a loud purr from her. Opening an eye, Suiren said, coiled up in the sun. We're going to set up a training schedule, and if depending on the situation you might be allowed to sign our contract and be our summoner. What situation? She asked, confused, seeing what she assumed was a grin form on the 2 summons' faces. Let's just say if today is going as we think it will, we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other than you think, Naruto said, giving a grin as well as she had a confused expression on her face, although a small blush formed on her face. Alright Ino-chan, we're going to set you on a standard training regimen for now and we'll go from there, so for now we're going to have you do, Naruto started before Suiren tossed a scroll to him which he caught, reading. Push-ups. 10 sets of 10. Sit-ups. 10 sets of 10. Crunches. 5 sets of 10. Squats. 5 sets of 10. Pull-ups. 10 sets of 10. Punches and kicks. 20 sets, 40 punches and kicks each. Chakra control exercises. Her jaw dropped as she exclaimed, why, you're kidding. They all laughed as Naruto said, Ino-chan, compared to my training this is light in comparison, although this is the simple trial training. When we get the kinks worked out on your strengths and weaknesses we can give you the optimal training schedule, we know you can do it. "Oh okay Naruto-kun, I'll get started now," she said, getting up as she got started as Tigress and Suiren sat next to Naruto now. "So girls, what do you say her reserves are standing at?" Naruto asked, watching her finish her sets of push-ups, sit-ups and crunches and now get to her squats as Naruto was caught by Tigress and Suiren staring at her ass. "Well Naruto-kun, from what we sensed she has the reserves of a Chunin. Barely. I feel if we put those seals on her she'll grow exponentially," Tigress said, getting a nod from him as he grabbed a blank scroll, jotting things down. "She's also quite flexible and limber. Our clans have various taijutsu scrolls that would be perfect for her, but that will be for her to decide," Suiren said, getting a nod from him. "Hey Ino-chan, what chakra control exercises do you know?" Naruto asked from his position as she was in the middle of her pull-ups. "I know the leaf balancing and the tree walking. I had started on the water walking exercise a couple months ago," she said, getting a nod from him, allowing her to continue while he added that to the list. "That's good to know Ino-chan, you can stop now," Naruto said as she just finished the last set of punches and kicks before she started huffing before she landed next to him. "So, what happens now Naruto-kun?" she asked, sitting next to him watching as he finished writing in the scroll. After a moment he said, "Well, from what we've seen we can tell you took your training at least a little more seriously than Sakura." Her chest puffed out before he continued. "But that doesn't mean much considering how few jutsu you know save for the mind transfer jutsu and the Academy 3. Your lack of a proficient taijutsu style. Your accuracy can use some work with your kunai and shuriken, and the same can be said for the other fields." She deflated instantly until she perked up as she heard, "But, with training you'll not only be better than Sakura, you will be a powerful kunoichi in the village by the time me and the others train you." Curious, she parroted. "You and the others? What others?" Tigress, Suiren and Naruto stared at her, making her blush before a cat-masked Anbu appeared in front of them. "Yes Neko-san?" Naruto said as the cat-masked kunoichi straightened her posture. "There is a council meeting and you, Ino-san, and your summons are required to show at the meeting," she said, getting a blank expression from Naruto. "Was this meeting called by the Hokage, the clan heads, or the daimyos of Hai no Kuni or Mizu no Kuni?" Naruto asked, getting silence in return. "Tell the civilians that if they want us then have one of them call the meeting, otherwise we're sitting our happy asses right here while they explain to the Hokage why they called a council meeting without either his knowledge, or the clans," he said, getting a nod from her as she vanished in a shunshin. "Naruto-kun, was that wise?" Ino asked cautiously, getting a nod. "By law only the Hokage, clan heads, elders, and the daimyo are permitted to call a council meeting unless in times of war. We aren't in a war, so we don't have to comply until one of them calls it. Besides, I thought you were enjoying spending time with me," he said with a grin, getting a blush. "I mean, the last time we hung out was before you went and joined Sakura's Sasuke fan club," he said, getting a negative sigh. "I know, it was just," she started before he patted her on the shoulder. "Peer pressure and wanting to be part of the in crowd, which being around me conflicted with it as everyone saw me as the dobi," he said, getting a nod. "Well, no problem Ino-chan, it's fine, that's in the past," Naruto said as she smiled before the two stood when Neko came back. "I'll take a guess and say the meeting is still being called, but now either the clan heads, Hokage or daimyos called it," he said, getting a nod, making him sigh as Suiren and Tigress hopped on the scroll he placed on his back before putting his hand on her shoulder. "Ready to go see what everyone wants?" Naruto asked, getting a shrug from the blonde as they all vanished, with Naruto and his group vanishing in a whirlpool of water as Neko followed closely behind. "Council chambers. When is that A civilian councilman started before all the shinobi and daimyos stared at him intently before correcting himself in mid-rant. "Boy, getting here we ordered him and the Yamanaka heiress to be here and it's been a half hour," he said before a whirlpool of water formed in the center of the chambers with the various Junin and the Genin 12 plus the Toad Sage Jiraiya himself. "Sorry, but the reason we didn't show was because the first meeting was called by civilians. This is a shinobi village, so by the law written by Hashirama Senju the only time civilians can call a council meeting is in times of war. I don't hear any combat at the moment, do you?" they heard as the whirlpool dispersed, showing Naruto standing next to Ino with Tigress and Suiren on the scroll. Letting her go, they bowed as Naruto said, "Honorable Shinobi Council, Hokage-san, Elder Council, Lord Menace, Lady Mai, Civilian Council." "So what is this about?" Naruto asked, stretching as they stared at the collected group. Over the course of the invasion, several witnesses have made point that you have been seen wielding several abilities and an unknown energy you call Riryoku. We would like you to explain why this is," the Hokage said, getting a shrug from Naruto. "For the several abilities you're most likely talking about my use of the Sharingan, Rinnegan, the fourth Hokage's fabled Rasengan and Hireishin, and my summons," he said nonchalantly, getting a nod from the large group as he sighed. "Well, first, the Rasengan is fabled as you all preach it to be, is simply chakra control given a purpose. Anyone with a brain can pull it off with enough chakra control and effort. Same for the Hireishin, being seals placed in a proper sequence giving its effect," Naruto said, getting an enraged look from the many who respected his father. "As for the Rinnegan and Sharingan? I don't know, you keep telling me my heritage is an unknown, but that raises a serious question in me, Hokage-sama, that in the eyes of your Lord Daimyo and fellow council members and shinobi, I would like it if you answered me," Naruto said, staring him in the eye. "And what would that be, Naruto my boy?" he said, seeing a foreign glint form in Naruto's eyes. "Growing up while running from the mobs formed by your civilians and shinobi, I would ask you who my parents were or what they were like, and you gave two answers that seemed to contradict the other quite seriously," Naruto said as his eyes narrowed. "And what was it I said, Naruto-kun?" he asked, feigning ignorance. "You would say 1 minute, they were great people loved by everyone in the village, while the other answer you gave was, I never knew your parents, Naruto-kun. So how is it you could say they were great people when you never knew them? Maybe Hokage is hiding things he has no right to keep from those involved," he said, staring him down as the group stared at them rather intently. "Yes, Sarutobi, what are you hiding? Because we have our own questions as well," Minace said, holding a black leather book with a gold leaf insignia on the book. Staring at Naruto, he said, "As I've said, Naruto, your parents were good people and you are to know of your heritage when you come of age." "You mean when you feel like letting me have what should have been mine when I was born? Try another excuse, and why are you curious about my summoning contract?" Naruto said as he stared at Naruto before the Hokage gestured to Jiraiya. "My student wishes to take you as an apprentice and wishes for you to sign the Toad contract," he said, getting an outburst from the civilians shouting that the demon shouldn't be allowed to sign their Yandaime's contract, much like many of the ninja around were shouting the same. "You mean the Toads? Why would I drop my allies for some summons I don't know, and your prized Yandaime's summons having a connection to the alleged demon?" he said, getting roars of agreement from the civilians and the Hyuga head. Concerned by the questions, the Hokage said, "That's nothing you need to concern yourself." Shrugging, Naruto said, "Then I will respectfully decline, give the contract to someone else." "Why are you making this difficult, Gaki? I was told by sensei that you wanted to be Hokage?" Jiraiya said, getting a snort from Naruto, making everyone look at him. "Sure, me Hokage to a village full of bigots and arrogance? No thanks. Besides, what's to say they even choose me in the future, or let alone do as I tell them? And I'm not being difficult, I simply told the Hokage to be honest, and as usual he tells me lies. Why should I trust a leader who can't tell me the truth?" Naruto said, getting a nod from the daimyos. "Yes, here is, and what aren't you telling the boy, and why so insistent on him being a Toad summoner? Even consider lying to me and I will only make the village's punishment worse," Minace said, unleashing his killer intent, making him gulp. Relenting, the Hokage said, "The reason I'm so insistent on you becoming a Toad summoner, Naruto, is because your father was the very man who sealed the 9 tails inside you that day. Your father was Minato Namikaze Senju, the son of Tobarama Senju, and your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, and through a series of blood tests we have determined that your mother was an Uchiha, or more so the daughter of Madara Uchiha." Many of the people present were shocked, while Naruto feigned shock as he said, "And that's why you were so insistent on me being the Toad summoner? And why tell me now and not when I was younger, or did you intend to at all?" He was about to speak when Minace interjected, "Actually, Naruto-san, a spy seemed to have dropped off a bit of evidence that concerns you, and it's safe to say he had zero intent, and this was orchestrated by your godfather as well, Jiraiya of the Sannin." Staring at him, Naruto said, "Then I have no intent on being a summoner of people who would betray my father. Now that we know the origin of my 2 dujutsu, I'll go into the odd energy I used, which I call Riryoku, or otherwise known as spiritual energy, the other half of the tools necessary to perform jutsu." Many were about to speak before he raised his hands. "Seeing as I'm the last of my clans of the Uzumaki, Senju and Namikaze, I'll be placing these in my clan secret category, but I'll give a bit of information. Riryoku, as I call it, is used to form several arts which all fall under the main category Kido or Demon Way. Shikaku asked, "What do you mean main category? You mean there's more than one?" He nodded. "Very astute of you, Shikaku-san, as you said the other arts have their own category, the first of which is Bakudo, the way of binding. With this I can immobilize my opponent or opponents without causing harm to them." Sighing as he stretched, saying, "The second I call Hado, the way of destruction, which are purely offensive techniques that cause damage of massive proportions, and both ways involve incantations as opposed to a ninja using hand signs." And lastly, pointing to Lee, who was standing without a crutch or assistance, as he said, "With this coming lastly to the Kaido, the turn way, this requires no incantation as you focus your Riryoku onto your target to heal them." Everyone besides who listened to him explain it before were amazed when a councilman shouted, "He must be put through the CRA." Many present roared in agreement until Manase's guards flashed their killer intent, letting him say, "Shame to say that nobody here besides Naruto can make that call. What, how dare you deny the village more of the Yondaimi's heirs? Imagine the possibilities of children of both Uchiha and Senju." A older-looking Sakura shouted before Zane and Kai stood beside her with their swords ready. "I dare because I allow your village the money necessary to stay afloat. I dare because I and Lady Mai are disgusted with the way this village treats their heroes. You were calling for his blood not only during the finals of the Chunin exams, but this village's own ninja tries to kill him. And many others try to keep him weak, and now that you all know he's my friend's son, you all decide now after the years of abuse and manipulation to have him obey you," he said as his killer intent built up, making many of the ninja and civilians sweat, but none more so than the elders, Hiruzen and Jiraiya. Showing the book in his hands, he said, "During the 2-month period of the wait of the Chunin exams, a plant-like woman gave me this, and to say the least, Sarutobi, I can't help but feel disgusted with you and this village. You removed the meaning of the swirl on everyone's clothing, you removed their history, and you dare let the people wear it while abusing its sole heir? Let's not even mention all the transgressions you've made during your reign towards the clans, which they will find out about when they return to their homes after this meeting." He started letting the various clans who were unaware of what he was talking about whisper amongst themselves. Letting the weight finally build, he said, "And I have set a punishment that not only I find suitable but an old ally agrees with as well. The Uzumaki swirl shall be removed from Konoha entirely and left to Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju, as will the forbidden scroll that his clan had given the village as a means of trust." After Manase finished what he said, Mai added to it, "Naruto and anyone he desires to bring with him at a time he chooses are free to leave Konoha, as they will no longer be Konoha ninja while serving as one of my ninja and Lord Daimyo at any time, as well as the village they so choose to join with him having the status of Tokubetsu Junin from this point on. But that symbol has been part of Konoha since the beginning," Jiraiya stated before he was met with a glare by the two daimyo. Then the older generation would have no problem explaining why it was removed due to them abusing the child whose clan gifted the village with said symbol only for them to spit on it for so many years. Toad Sage, Mai replied in return, getting a snort. "In Sarutobi we have come to a decision that will not only bring retribution to the parties involved but shame your clan more than you already have. The other village felt that you being publicly executed would be suitable, but we feel that you being left to live while forcefully being removed from office would be more effective, while a ninja of our choosing goes to get the most effective choice to replace you and get things back to the way your predecessors had things," Manase said as Jiraiya inflated. "I'm Rei," he started before Mai held her hand up. "We chose Naruto-kun and whoever he chooses to join him on this mission to receive Tsunade of the Sannin. With her pedigree she would be the perfect cage to get you all to realize your proper places," she said, getting a bow from Naruto as Zane removed Naruto's leaf headband and instead gave him a headband holding the water and fire guard symbol on it, with Naruto placing his leaf headband in his pouch. "We're looking forward to working with you in the future, kid," Zane said, holding his hand out to Naruto, which he took, shaking it before he went back to his daimyo's side. "Naruto, you are to find Tsunade. You're free to take as long as necessary, but you must have your group ready before you leave, as you are to meet us at the cage's office where we will be handling the business that Hiruzen should have been doing," Manase said, getting a bow from Naruto when the gavel hit the ground, letting the group gathered that the meeting has come to an end as Naruto and Ino vanished in a whirlpool. "Abandoned training ground. Your dad's the 4th Hokage?" Ino shouted when they returned to the training field they used previously. Naruto shrugged. "Yeah, I know," he said, cutting her off mid-rant. You knew how, why didn't you say anything? Ino practically demanded, getting a shrug from Naruto. Well, think back, Ino, when I was a blonde. Besides your clan, what other ninja had spiky blonde hair and blue eyes? He said, creating two clones who turned into the Yondaime and him before his transformation as they stood side by side. I mean, take my whisker marks away, I was a practical doppelganger of him, for crying out loud, until I changed, Naruto said, getting a nod now that she thought about it. Wait, if that's the case, then why did nobody see the resemblance? Or say anything for that matter? Ino asked as she saw Naruto raise an eyebrow. Ino-chan, you saw how the people in there reacted when they offered to me signing my dad's Toad contract. Would anyone believe I'm their beloved fourth Hokage's son, proof or no? Naruto said, getting a nod as Naruto sighed, stretching. Well, training's finished for today. I suggest you get cleaned up and pack supplies for at the minimum a month. You know how to seal stuff into scrolls, right? Naruto asked, getting a nod from her. Good, have everything on hand, be outside your compound in at least an hour, and be sure to tell your dad and let him know we're going, he said, walking away. Where are we going? She asked, yelling as he made his way to the village. To get a Sanin, he yelled, leaving her field of vision as she grinned, getting to chase after her idol, showing that Kunoichi were strong as she ran home with a skip to her step. Hokage's office. I'm here as directed, Lord Menace, Lady Mai, Naruto said, getting the attention of the two country leaders and their guards as they were going through the papers with an obvious look of disappointment and disgust. Ah yes, Naruto-kun, do you know who you're going to take on the mission? Mai asked, getting a nod from him. Yes, I would like to take the Yamanaka heiress Ino Yamanaka as my partner for the mission, he said, getting raised eyebrows from the group. Isn't she just a genin? And came just below your former teammate Sakura Haruno for Kunoichi of the Year? Zane asked, getting a nod from him. Yes, this is true, she was the runner-up, and considering she, much like Sakura, didn't fully devote to her Kunoichi career, she wishes to fix that. She came to me wanting to improve yesterday and I agreed to help her, but with me going on this mission I can't do that. So with her traveling with me, not only will we be a small group so Tsunade won't be thrown off, but I can also help Ino get to where she was supposed to be, Naruto said, getting a nod from the others as he saw they weren't all too thrilled. Maybe I came at the wrong time? Naruto said as Kai shook his head, saying. Wah, no, it's not that. We've been looking these things over and evaluating the files this village had since yesterday, and to be honest, how the village hasn't fallen apart yet with the civilians taking funds from the village to use for horrendous purposes like this, it's simply horrible, he said, rubbing his eyes as Mai came holding the forbidden scroll with several scrolls. Well, here you go, Naruto-kun, the Uzumaki clan scroll. The collective information of all techniques your clans knew as well as the collected funds they held, she said, getting an appreciative nod from him before he sealed it away. Well, your team has been accepted and this will be an S-rank mission for the two of you. She has been sighted in Tanzaku-gai with her apprentice Shizune and her pet pig Tauntaun. As I said, you're free to take as long as you need to find her and get her to return to the village. Just do so by whatever means, Menace said, tossing him the black book as Naruto reread through the entire thing, showing genuine disgust. You're free to leave, Naruto, and good luck on your mission, Mai said as Naruto bowed, with Naruto leaving in a shunshin. You know, I thought I just hated paperwork, Menace started, getting a nod from those gathered. But I hate having to read someone else's paperwork even more, he groaned, which the others copied before going back to the paperwork. Yamanaka clan compound. Appearing in front of the Yamanaka compound, Naruto said to Suiren and Tigress, who assumed their human form. So girls, shall we get our teammate and be on our way? They nodded with a grin as Naruto knocked on the door, with Ino and her father appearing at the door as Naruto said. Hello Inoichi-sama, I need your daughter for a mission. He nodded, getting out of the doorway, letting the three in as they sat on the couch. Yes, Ino-chan told me about that, and I also wanted to thank you for helping her get stronger. But I want to ask what your opinion is of my daughter. Confused, he said, well, before Ino-chan became a Sasuke fangirl, she and I were close friends and we've just started fixing that patch. Cutting him off, he said, I mean, Naruto, what do you think of her as a woman? I ask because your father and I were friends. In fact, I and many of the clan heads were close to your parents, and when we saw the resemblance you had to Minato, we tried to adopt you, only to be denied by Hiruzen with the backing of the Elder Council and the civilians. Looking at Ino, he said, well, Inoichi-san, I have always thought she was beautiful, she's smart, she isn't afraid to speak up when she has to. I know that in the future she's going to be even more stunning than she is now, this I have little to no doubt, just like I have no doubt that she'll be an amazing clan head. She was blushing from the praise as her father smiled, pulling a small scroll from his pocket before rolling it open across the table. He said, Naruto, it's clear to me that you have a big heart and I know that you're going to be in the CRA to restore your families. This is the contract your father and I drew up before you two were born, and this would create an alliance between your clans and ours. Sort of like the Ino Shikacho, whatever decisions you make we will follow, as Ino will become your wife. Naruto and Ino, who joined him and the others on his side of the couch, sat staring at the contract as she grabbed the pen offered by her father, signing it as she said, I made one mistake with the spoiled brat Sasuke. I know I'm not making the wrong choice this time. With her name written, she handed the paper to him as Naruto quickly signed after her without a second thought, smiling at Ino genuinely as she quickly kissed his lips before pulling back with a blush. I hope I'm leaving my baby girl in good hands? Inoichi said, getting a nod from Naruto as he relented. Good, and Naruto, just so you know, if you hurt her in a way that was intentional I will rewrite your mind to where you believe you're a 6-year-old girl named Suzy, got me? He said seriously, making Naruto nod quickly. Note to self: do not piss off fathers, and get help from Inoichi in future for fatherly intimidation tactics, Naruto thought as they all got up and his wife came in with a scroll, handing it to her daughter, kissing her forehead. Now get going, princess, and Naruto look after my daughter, Rose, Ino's mother said, getting a positive from him as they walked out. Wrapping her arms around her husband's waist, Rose said, so you think she'll be okay? Kissing her forehead, he said, of course, I could see it in his eyes. Naruto will protect her and help her grow, but right now I think you and I could use some much needed alone time. She purred before racing up the stairs, being followed by him. East Gate. So Naruto-kun, do you know where Tsunade-sama is? Ino asked, walking next to Naruto with Tigress and Suiren next to her. According to the information Lady Mai and Lord Minace gave me, she's in Tanzaku-gai with her apprentice Shizune. If you move fast with little breaks and training we should make it there in, at the most, a few weeks, at the max to a couple days if you want to hurry there and start searching while we continue training, he said, allowing her to weigh her options. Why don't you let me tag along and help? They heard, making Naruto groan as the group of four turned to see Jiraiya ride to the gate on a toad before he drooled, seeing the two summons in their human forms. And hello my two lovely maidens, shall I assist you on this mission while I get you two angels a drink? He said with hearts in his eyes, getting the two to roll their eyes. Sorry Toad Sage, but that's not happening. We're with Naruto-kun and you're not allowed to help on this mission, or would you like to explain to your daimyo why you disobeyed his orders? Tigress said, getting a strange look from the toad, who croaked. Listening to the toad, Jiraiya said, ladies, my friend tells me you two aren't human. Who are you and what are you doing around my grandchild? The two took their original form, getting shocked looks from the toad and summoner. You, he said, getting eye rolls. Yes, Jiraiya of the toad, us, and no, you're not assisting our summoner on this mission as you'd only get in the way. Suiren said, getting a threatening croak from the toad under Jiraiya. Watch yourself, Toad, you failed to assist your prized summoner's son while doing nothing to help him. He found our scroll and we took him in and trained him. He is ours as is his children and mates. Got a problem, take it up with our bosses, Suiren said, while Tigress growled at the toad when its tongue flicked out at Naruto, with Naruto using his Soanga to cut it, making the toad dispel. Watch yourself, Jiraiya, you betrayed my father and I have no intention of working with the likes of you if I can help it. Now we're going to be leaving now, so we'll be on our way, Naruto said, walking away with his familiars retake their human forms before they and Ino ran after him while the fallen summoner glared. Time skip later that night. I can't wait to go to bed, Tigress said, stretching as she and the others made a dash with no rest after the run-in with Jiraiya. Yeah, but first, Tigress, don't you think we should do that first? Suiren said, getting a look from Naruto and the others before she sighed, pointing to the clan summoning contract. Since she became Naruto-kun's wife, much like us, she deserves to sign the contract and learn our arts, and I know the perfect taijutsu for her to learn, one that uses her thin frame and her focuses on her flexibility and quick movements, she explained, pulling out a scroll from her pocket. You mean other than her learning both our clan styles as is? Tigress said, getting a nod from the water dragon. Naruto-koi, could you get out the scroll? Suiren asked as they sat on the couch with him grabbing the scroll from the floor as they rolled it out. Naruto-koi? Ino parroted, getting a nod from them as they explained the whole deal between them. So you two are also his wives, and many others. Anything else I should know about? Ino said, staring at them. Well, there is one thing, Naruto said with a sigh, explaining the whole deal from his time training and everything before. When he finished, she sat back. So your clan's home country was betrayed by the village and you want retribution and intend to destroy the village when necessary, as your family was destroyed, as your mom and cousin are part of an organization in an attempt to prevent the Leaf Village's attempt to have a tyrannical rule over the elemental nations, while you absorbed the power of the nine-tailed beasts, making you the same creature the sage fought against? She said, getting a nod from him. And you intend on having the clans that were wronged by the Hokage mine and many others included to join and follow you to another village? She said, getting a nod from him as she stared at them. If you don't agree with it, you're free to leave Ino-chan and end the contract if you desire, he said as she continued to stare at them before she took her kunai and slice her finger, writing her name in both the Tiger contract and the Leviathan contract as she rolled it up and grabbed him by his shirt, giving him a kiss. Pulling back, she said, I told you I'm not leaving your side, Naruto-kun, and I meant it, but thank you for being honest with me. He smiled before he gained a sinister grin which Tigress and Suiren shared, making the blonde shiver. By the way, we're going to run you into the ground training, Ino-chan. I hope you're ready, but for now the girls have to prepare you, he said as the two carried Ino to the bathroom, where a loud disturbance was heard in the bathroom. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Let go of my shirt. Where do you think your hands are going, damn it? He heard from the bathroom before he slipped into his sleep clothes, laying on the bed when the door opened, showing a disturbed Ino and the others wearing their sleep clothes. I hope you don't mind sharing the bed, Ino-chan, he said, lying on his back as Tigress to his left arm while Suiren took the right. Where am I supposed to sleep then? The blonde asked when Tigress patted his chest. You get to sleep on this bed of handsome here, Ino-chan. Come on, we got to get up early to get ready for training and make our way to Tanzaku, guy, Tigress said, nuzzling her face into his neck. Blushing, she crawled up the bed with her lying on top of him completely with her head on his chest before sleep claimed her as he kissed her head as they all fell asleep. Next morning in a forest. Naruto-kun, what are we doing here? And why am I so tired? Ino asked, wearing her clothes. We're here to train, start your legitimate training today. As for why you're so tired is because of the seals the girls put on you, he said, getting a questioning look from her. What seals? What did you have them put on me? She asked, alarmed, getting a wave of the hand. No need to worry, just some seals of my design. Gravity and resistance seals to make you stronger and faster. Chakra seals that absorb your chakra and pushes it back into your chakra network, causing them to expand, increasing your reserves, he said, getting wide-eyed look. Now today we're going to put you through your paces. We have as long as we need to get Tsunade back, but it's best if we get to Tanzaku, guy, before we do things seriously, he said. So this is to just start me off? She said, getting a nod from them as they handed her a scroll. What's this? She asked as they told her to read it, as she complied before going wide-eyed, making the three smile before Naruto smacked his forehead. What is it, Naruto-kun? Suiren asked, making him sigh. I forgot I promised Kenpachi I'd fight him after that meeting yesterday, he said, smacking his head, getting a sweat drop to form on the three girls' heads. You still tend to be a bit scatter-brained, Naruto-kun, Ino said, getting a chuckle from him. Yeah, well, I doubt that he'll mind. I didn't even see him in the village before I meet you for training yesterday, so it's likely he left already. We'll see him eventually, he said, getting a nod from the others. Now come on, Ino-chan, we gotta get started on your training. Believe me, when we get back you'll be stronger than you were before, he said, making her nod as they started her training. So Naruto-kun, I can't help but ask something, Ino asked, wearing a change of clothes after she had destroyed her last pair training with the help of Tigress and Suiren. She now wore a black tight sleeveless bodysuit that stopped at her feet, leaving the heel open, with a pair black thigh-high boots and a steel belt that was held by a metal stud with two elbow-length gloves, while the bodysuit showed her developing curves and high CC cup bust. Over the month and a half of training she's grown more lean and taut as her body developed properly with an actual diet, thanks to Naruto and the others, while growing larger chakra coils. Thanks to Naruto gathering information, they learned that Tsunade was delayed due to some reason and she wasn't going to be in Tanzaku Gai for another month and a half, which he informed the two daimyos on as a heads up. Holding her waist as she sat on his lap on the remains of a tree they used for training, Naruto said as Suiren and Tigress sat next to them, sure, ask away. Well, if the village betrayed your clan and by extension Tsunade, why get her? Why help at all when we could get the various clans and leave while you got her later? The blonde said. Well my friend, there's a method to Naruto-kun's madness. First, he knows the village would do anything to keep him and by extension the various future wives of the other clans. Your friend Hinata, Anko and the others already know of this thanks to a message he left them, Suirin said, making the blonde look at her. Okay, but what's to stop the village from trying anything now? She asked as Tigress scratched her head. Well, they're already in a load of trouble as is thanks to the information our friend left the two daimyos. They're waiting for the heat to get off their backs and to appease the clans and a contract between Naruto-kun and the girls from the village. The brunette said, getting a nod from the Yamanaka heiress. But what would stop them from trying something after the fact? She asked, getting a shrug. Well, the daimyos are keeping a permanent eye on the village, and while the village may think they're smarter than the daimyos, they are not by any means. So if they try anything, the village loses all funding and mission income from the fired daimyo, leaving them SOL. Either way they cut it anyway, Naruto said as she nodded. Plus Naruto wants them all under his protection as a precaution, knowing that the cage is already up Schitt's Creek as is for doing what he has to our lovely wolf, Tigress said, kissing his cheek as she and Suirin did the same for the blonde. Patting her thigh, he said, alright Ino-chan, let's get to training again. We're going to be working on your ninjutsu since you have an affinity for futon. Sweden and Raiden, we're going to be having a mass shadow clone training session as they practice the elemental manipulation tests to master using those elements. She nodded, bouncing off his lap, showing her firm backside as Naruto and the others stood up when she created over 4,000 shadow clones, making Naruto grin thanks to the seals he placed on her, expanding her coils to match his own. She now had enough to throw S-rank jutsu around without worry, although she lacked the control, coming just short of low Sannin in control. As the three each created a clone, with Naruto creating one last clone to teach fire, he had them lead the massive army of clones deeper into the forest while the four stood where they were. Okay Ino-chan, time for your evaluation thus far, Naruto said as Suirin tossed her a small scroll which she opened, reading her current results. Ino Yamanaka training results. Taijutsu. Mid Junin. Low Enbu, styles known, Tiger style, Leviathan style, Shaolin Kung Fu. Ninjutsu. Mid Chunin. Low Junin, known elements. 0, Nose Clan Jutsu, Academy Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu and various CA rank non-elemental ninjutsu. Genjutsu. High Junin. Fuinjutsu. Level 9 Uzumaki Junin, knowledge of various notes, bombs, and seals. Weapon of preference. Twin Katana, double-bladed spear, same as one of Naruto's. Chakra reserves. Jubi level. Chakra control. High Sannin. Stamina. High Junin. Reflexes. High Junin. Rank. Mid-A rank. As you know, we've been training for a little over a month and a half and your reserves were made to match mine thanks to the seals which destroyed themselves, leaving only the gravity and resistance seals. I feel by the time we find Tsunade you could be considered AS rank, Naruto said as the two summons next to him nodded. Add in the training under our mothers you'll be undergoing when we deem you ready to train in Senjutsu and learn from them, Tigress said, getting a whoop from the blonde before she promptly stopped. Wait, what about the others? What about them? Won't they need to get stronger for this to work out? Ino asked, getting a grin from him and the others. Before Naruto-kun left, he left them all scrolls that hold clones of all this to train them so they won't be a problem. In fact, Anko, Hana, Kurenai, Hinata, Ayame and Yugo will all be stronger than before by the time we get back, Naruto said with a fanged grin which she grew to love. We're getting off track. We have to focus on Ino-chan and getting in as much training as possible before we meet Tsunade in a month, and we still have the snake to worry about. More than likely he's coming for her, Suirin said, getting a nod from the others. Who's the snake? You mean Orochimaru Hiruzen's traitorous student? Ino asked, getting a nod. Why would he be looking for Tsunade-sama? Ino asked curiously, getting a grin from Naruto and the others. Well, Ino, my lovely blonde, I've always been the stealthy sort growing up. Hell, I managed to sneak into the Hokage Tower and the information department of the I&T squad and learned that the curse seal he branded on Sasuke and Anko-chan don't come without sacrifice. Naruto started getting curious glances from the blonde. What sacrifice would that be, Naruto-kun? She asked, watching Naruto and the others stand with her. Well, he infuses a portion of his soul into the seal, making it possible for him to possess the bearer of the curse mark as it weakens the bearer's willpower. So when he takes over the body he swallows the soul of the body's original owner, he said, making her turn a sickly green. That's sick. She started getting a nod from the others. Yeah, it is, and therein lies the problem, my dear. You see, he's fractured his soul so many times it's become a liability for him. His own body, or more so the body he's in along with the bodies he will over, begins to reject him like a transplanted organ rejects the new body it's been placed in, where he has to do it every few years after taking it over, Naruto said, getting a curious look from her. So that's why he's going to Tsunade-sama, to push the disease back as long as possible for him to take over the next body, right? In which case would be Sasuke. She said, getting a nod. Wait, but can't you remove the curse seal? She asked, getting a half and half from Naruto. I could, but the seal could only be removed if the person with the seal isn't corrupt. Since we were kids, Sasuke's soul has been bathed in darkness even before he got the seal to wear in the academy. He made it impossible for kids to graduate because he horribly crippled them out of fear they'd be a threat to him. Anko, on the other hand, absolutely despises the curse seal and resists its temptation at every turn, making it possible since she's been fighting its influence, he said, getting a nod from her. We're getting a focus. We've got to work on Ino's chakra control, so create another couple dozen and have them mix up the leaf balancing, water walking and tree walking exercises while we work on your taijutsu and kenjutsu, Suiren said, getting a nod from the blonde. Creating another 30 clones. After chewing a chakra pill, they went into the forest to perform the chakra control exercises. Alright Ino-chan, while your platoon of clones are working on elemental manipulation and chakra control, we will be picking back up on your physical training as we've focused on your ninjutsu and genjutsu, Suiren said, getting a nod as she and Ino stood across from each other. Watching the spar, Tigress asked with her head in Naruto's lap with a purr scratching her head, who do you think will win, Naruto-kun? Looking down at her sharp eyes, he leaned down, planting a kiss on her lips. He said, sitting back up. She's improved greatly over the time we've trained her form, where she didn't last even a minute against either of us, and now she's able to handle us for a good couple of hours when we really let go. I would say it's a tough call with those two. Seeing the two pull out their weapons, the two got into a kenjutsu battle, with it still being close, making Naruto and Suiren watch intrigued. True, but don't you think they're kinda overdoing it? Maybe, even just a little bit? She asked, getting a shrug. If they do or don't, it's no problem. Besides, we got time to kill, and if they exhaust themselves we can relax and let her clones dispel as she boosts her control and master the exercises so we can get to the elemental ninjutsu portion of her training. Then we can get her ready to learn from your and Suiren's moms, Naruto said as they watched Suiren and Ino dance around each other, ducking and dodging each other. See Ken-chan, I told you he was here. They heard, making them turn to see Kenpachi and Yachiru again walking towards them as the pinkhead waved enthusiastically. Yeah, but you're the one who told me he was in Wave. We've been following your direction this entire time and we've been everywhere but here, Kenpachi said with a drawl as the girl puffed her cheeks as she waved her hand dismissively while looking to the side. You chose to go in the opposite direction every time I told you where to go, Kenny, she said, sticking out her tongue, making the four sweat drop. Leaning over to the others he whispered, what makes me think that this is a regular thing with those two? About as likely as you having a love for ramen, Ino said, getting a glare from Naruto. One, that's a low blow, and two, I think they're about done, Naruto said as they turned towards the two as they stopped arguing. Where the hell were you, kid? I've been waiting at the final exam stadium since the meeting ended, Kenpachi said, getting a raised eyebrow from Naruto. What do you mean? I checked the entire village and didn't see either of you. I just assumed you left and thought, oh well, we'll see them again since we had a mission to get Tsunade to be the new Hokage, Naruto said, getting a twitching eyebrow from Kenpachi as he stared at Yachiru, who whistled innocently, making Naruto sweat drop. She's bad at giving directions, isn't she? Naruto said, getting a nod from the bell-wearing swordsman. Like you wouldn't believe. Oh well, I found you now and I'm getting my fight, he said as the young girl jumped off his shoulder and ran to the others while Naruto unsealed his Masamune and drew it from its sheath. Whistling in respect for Naruto's sword, he said, impressive looking blade, boy, but I hope you don't carry that thing around just for show. Seeing the boy's eyes grow cold and narrow, he said, I don't try to impress, I try to kill, come. In an instant Naruto was in front of Kenpachi as he blocked his downward swing with his sword, struggling to do so as Zaraki attempted to kick Naruto in the chest, only for Naruto to jump, landing on the outstretched limb. Do try harder, Zaraki-san, or this is going to be a rather short fight, Naruto said, jumping back as Naruto ran towards him again, going for a slash across the chest only to see his sword not even land a scratch, much to his and the other's shock. Cackling, he said, "Nice try, boy, but if you want to kill me you're going to have to be serious and not come at me with that pitiful excuse you call killer intent. Show me that boy from before." Pushing Naruto off balance, he slashed Naruto from his right shoulder to his left hip, coating the ground in his blood, making Naruto slide back with a hiss. "Damn, I kinda didn't want to go all out, but if that's what you want it's only fair I be a good host," Naruto said, causing the area to be hit with an unearthly pressure, making Zaraki have a psychotic grin on his face while the girls kept a hold of Ino and Yachiru to ease the effects on them. "Yes, yes, yes. That's it, boy, make me feel alive," he said, ripping his eye patch as the area was affected by his killer intent as well, causing the air to ripple and distort as the two became a blur with nothing but sparks and the sounds of metal meeting metal could be heard. "With the others, this killer intent is unreal," Ino said, staring as she saw Naruto and Zaraki fade in and out of existence as they reappeared in the field as they clashed time and again, with the taller male receiving several slashes across the chest with a cut between his eyes. Naruto wasn't without injury himself as his chest was covered in cuts as well that were slowly healing, while he had a cut just above his right eye causing blood to cover the right portion of his face as the redhead spat blood from his mouth. "Do you think Naruto-kun is going to be okay? I mean, yeah, he's strong, but from what you all told me about this guy, the first can't help but worry," Ino asked, getting a nod from the pinkhead as she swung her legs on a tree branch. "Foxy-chan is going to be just fine, he's giving Kenny what he wanted," Yachiru said with a smile as she saw the two men run around each other as their swords clashed again. "What is it that he wanted anyways?" Tigress asked, getting a small smile from the little girl. "To die by the hands of someone stronger than him. I've traveled with Kenny 2-chan since I was barely a year old, crawling in the snow in Tetsu no Kuni when he found me and took me in, and since then not a single ninja or swordsman could beat him," Yachiru said, seeing the crazed grin on Zaraki's face. To say the three were shocked was an understatement, as Suiren said, regaining the wind that was unknowingly knocked out of her. Why would he want to die? Why would he leave you alone after taking you in?" She smiled, saying, "It's what he wants and it makes him happy. Besides, I knew about this for a while and I'm ready for it." The three just stared at her before returning to the fight between Zaraki and Naruto. Leaning to the right, missing a downward swing, Naruto swung up, meeting the attack, causing the two swords to clash again as his jagged sword snapped with a Naruto making the return swing across his chest with a deep cut, making him cough up blood. Huffing as he gasped in pain, Kenpachi said, "Kid, finish it, I'm done." Looking the man in the eye, he nodded as he firmed his grip Masamune before plunging it into his chest through the heart before removing it as he fell back. Putting the sword in its sheath as he turned against the dying man when he felt something grip onto his pants, making him look down to see Zaraki with the same grin, except he had a more satisfied expression, like he fulfilled his life's dream. "'Kay kid, see, can I ask you a favor?" he said, wheezing, making Naruto put his attention towards the dying man. "Whatever it is, I'll do it within the best of my ability," Naruto said, getting a smile that seems out of place on the man. I want you to raise Yachiru as your own. It doesn't matter if you do it as your daughter or sister, but just don't leave the girl alone again. I chose you as my opponent knowing I was going to lose, and I can tell you will be a great parent or brother to her, as I couldn't." He coughed violently, catching his breath. Taking a deep breath as tears lightly stung his eyes, he said, I never told this to her, but I always loved that girl like a daughter, and I know you'll look out for her just as well and give her what I couldn't. Just don't tell her I loved her like that. Don't want to ruin my image, got it, kid?" Naruto nodded, getting a grin from the man as his eyes slowly closed as he nodded before his breathing stopped, making Naruto and the others behind him bow their heads after Naruto put a stasis seal on the man's body before putting it in a pocket dimension to be buried later at a place he won't be disturbed. As Naruto walked over to the others, Yachiru said with tears in her eyes, seeing the man she saw as a father dead, "What did Kenny say, Foxy?" Crouching to her level, he said, looking into her eyes, "Kenpachi told me he wanted me to look after you. If you wish, I'd be more than happy then to raise you as my daughter or sister if you want. Of course you don't have to call me Ni-chan or Tu-chan, as you can continue to call me what you always have, but do know that I will look after you and raise you as my own." She stared at him for a moment before wrapping her arms around his neck with a nod, making him smile as he put Yachiru on his shoulders with her hands on top of his head, giving her mile-long smile. "Come on everyone, it's late and we can continue training in the morning," Naruto said as the others nodded with them heading to town. Tanzaku Gai Hotel. So Yachiru-chan, any idea what you want to eat? Naruto asked standing at the counter as she shook her head giving a no when Ino suggested rice and fish which they all agreed to. Foxy ni-chan. Yachiru said making him turn to the little pinkhead as she fidgeted in her seat. What's up? Naruto said leaning towards her as she stared at the counter. Can you teach me to be a ninja while I learn kenjutsu? She asked getting a smile from Naruto and the others as he ruffled her hair puffing out her cheeks. Of course you can after I perform a blood ritual tonight of course, he said making her raise an eyebrow after she fixed her hair. Blood? Ritual what's that? She asked getting a grin from Naruto as he flashed his dujutsu for a moment before looking towards Suiren to explain. Sighing she said, a blood ritual is a ritual clans used to take in members that are not part of their clan as it rewrites their DNA to where it matches the person who performed it. As the ritual is performed you cut your palm and his palm and put the two cuts together as he forces his energy through your cut to rewrite your genetics. So I'll officially be his daughter or sister. Why didn't you just say that in the first place? She said making the force stare at her with a raised eyebrow. Wait a second, you understood that? Ino asked getting a blank expression from the young girl. I'm 6 not stupid, you know there's a difference since I have more common sense underneath my pink head of hair unlike that loud girl. She said simply making Naruto and the others smack their foreheads with a resounding smack. Yachiru seeing this just stared at them curiously thinking, I seem to be involved with a lot of weird people. Seeing the smoke coming from behind Naruto she tapped Naruto on the arm making him look down to see her point at the stove causing him to turn, oh shit. Seeing him panic she giggled as he ran around the kitchen spastically before he sighed in relief much to the little girl's amusement. Later that night. Okay Yachiru, we're going to perform the ritual and this is going to hurt a bit but I need you to stay conscious, alright? Naruto said as he and the little girl sat in the middle of a large seal array with Suiren and Tigress sitting at opposite ends as Tigress was behind Naruto and Suiren was behind Yachiru with both of their hands pressed firmly against the other's back. Nodding, Naruto took out a kunai and sliced his palm before the little girl held her palm out allowing him to slice it without a flinch making sure the two cuts were deep enough to have the blood flow. Grabbing her hand tightly Naruto focused his chakra, Ryotsu and Yukai into her making her gasp in pain as Suiren and Tigress focused natural chakra through them to soothe the pain as he activated his Rinnegan to see her chakra pathways surge open and expand at an incredible rate while the little girl whimpered in pain from the Yukai entering her system. We're almost finished Yachiru, just a little longer. The Yukai is saturating your chakra network and copying it creating its own larger reserves. Once that's finished it will be over, Naruto said as she nodded with a pained expression on her face before promptly passing out once the process was complete. Wiping the sweat off their foreheads Naruto said, let's put her in her bed so she can rest while my chakra, Yukai and Ryotsu can alter her body. By tomorrow she should become a demon much like me and Ino after I marked you, and could you put the gravity and resistance seals on her, Suiren? The Leviathan nodded carrying the girl on her back as she grabbed the seal kit. Alarmed the blonde said, wait, I'm a demon now? The three nodded as Naruto said, yeah, that mark acts as a slower process of what we just did to Yachiru as I focused my Yukai and chakra through my fangs as it saturated your coils. The only reason you haven't sprouted your tails is because your body is still adjusting to the Yukai. By tomorrow or next week you'll wake up with your senses fully enhanced and a pair of 10 fluffy blonde tails and ears of your very own to cuddle. This made the blonde blush as she was known to obsess over Naruto's tails because they were so warm and fluffy that sometimes she would wrap them around herself as a blanket or use them as a pillow to rest after training or just rub them as she relaxed from training. Will it hurt as much as it did for Yachiru-chan? Ino asked as she and the others stripped out of their clothes into their sleep clothes which for Suiren consisted of light blue see-through nightgown. Tigress wore a pair of boy shorts and a sports bra holding her C-cup breast, and Ino wore the same as Tigress. Shaking his head as he leaned back allowing them to take their usual positions as he said giving each of them a kiss. No, while it will hurt it will be marginally easier on you compared to what it will for you, although there will be some side effects from the transformation. Raising an eyebrow she said, side effects, what side effects? Tigress combing a hand through the blonde's hair she said, well, it would be better to explain when it happens, but for now just go with the human term of being horny when the process is complete. She blushed, getting a grin from the three as the others yawned, making him say, "Let's get some sleep and deal with that later." So I'm going to be a horny wolf girl when the transformation is finished," she said, getting a nod from the others, making her moan as Naruto and the others gave her a kiss before they all went to sleep. The next morning, sitting at the kitchen counter, Naruto said, nursing a cup of coffee with the others, "Well, look who's up finally. Good morning, Yachiru." Turning, they saw the little girl mumble, scratching her head as they noticed that she now sported a pair of wolf dark pink bordering black on top of her head like her hair that was the same color of her ears, with a red fringe over her right eye, while she also had a long wolf tail poking from the top of her shorts. Opening her eyes, she had dark red eyes as she said, "Morning, Foxy Ni-chan." Waving to her, she made her way to the bathroom while Naruto counted down on his fingers while saying quietly, 3, 2, 1. On cue, they heard a loud scream come from the bathroom, making Naruto snigger while the new demon came running out of the room, alarmed and extremely afraid, as she said, What happened to me?" Walking to her, he said, putting a hand on her head, trying to calm her down, "Relax, Yachiru, you just became a demon like myself, and Ino, when she becomes one, so will all your other Nei-chans. The process, I used my blood to alter your DNA to be red as my daughter, sister, giving you my bloodlines which we can train in. Now you get cleaned up and put on some training gear so we can begin your training. So I can be as strong as you," she said, getting a grin from him and the others, getting a new formed fang grin from the little girl before she ran to the bathroom before peeking her head out of the door. Cutting her off before she could speak, he said, "Just imagine yourself without the ears and tail and they'll disappear under an illusion that can't be traced." She nodded before closing the door as Ino said, "I got a question, Naruto-kun." Looking at her, she took that as the sign to ask, "What is the importance of the number of tails?" "I mean, in the textbooks the 9 tails was considered the strongest because it had the most tails, but it has to be more to it than that, right?" Suiren nodded, saying, "Well, it does tie together the fact that the tails act as a power level. 1 tail would be the equivalent of a cage, and 10 tails like Naruto-kun would be considered beyond S rank or even an army of S ranks, so it would be considered his ranking would be that of an Z class, which is what the original 10 tails was as his mates. We all are as strong as him." The blonde nodded, saying, "So the 1 tails which me, the others and Yachiru at the moment are considered cage level. When we master that tail, and the others are just a level above that for each tail." Naruto shook his head, saying, "No, it varies for the tailed beasts. For the 1 tails it is beyond cage level, as are its mates should he have any. Same for the 2 tails and up and their mates or children, as the power they gain from them is that cap unless they kill a biju of a higher tail, letting you take its place." Coming to the conclusion, Ino said, "So the tails act as an indicator of how strong you are, and each tail act as a marker to show how much of that power you can use. So even with the 1 tail we are as strong as a cage, but we can be stronger?" They nodded as Yachiru came out wearing her clothes from yesterday. While sitting at the table, Naruto pushed a plate to her, letting her eat the breakfast Naruto made for the young girl as she shoveled it down quickly. "Alright, let's head down to the forest and we can train and begin your training session, Yachiru-chan," Naruto said as she nodded, hopping on his back while they ran out the window. Forest area. "Alright, Ino-chan, I want you to perform the same as yesterday, and Yachiru, we're going to work on your chakra control and beginning ninjutsu training for the time being, so I want you to perform the seal. Ino does all right and then wait for our instructions," Naruto said, getting a nod from the little girl as she created as many clones as Ino had, being well over a little over 400. As Naruto performed the shadow clone, he created 8 clones to oversee the training, while Naruto said, "Alright, all clones of Yachiru, I want you to split up in 4 groups of 100 and follow a clone of mine through the forest to train in your chakra control." They nodded as they followed the clones in separate groups in different directions of the forest, while the originals of everyone stood where they were, making Naruto nod. "Good. Now Yachiru, a thing you should know about the shadow clone jutsu is that it is the perfect training tool for people like you, me and the others," Naruto said, making her and Ino raise an eyebrow. "How is it perfect for us?" his daughter, sister asked, getting a small smile from Naruto. "It's perfect because whatever the clone learns the original does as well when it dispels, which makes things perfect for chakra control and jutsu training, and now that you're a demon you're immune to the mental backlash. So until I say your chakra control is suitable enough you won't be doing any overly extensive jutsu training until you've fully mastered the chakra control exercises you're learning now," he said, getting a nod from the girl. Now then I want you to create another couple hundred clones as they will practice the 3 basic jutsu with my clones while I and the others start your physical training," Naruto said, getting a nod from her as she created another couple hundred clones while Naruto created a few clones to lead them down into the forest a little closer to where they were. Seeing the girl move rather stiffly, Naruto answered her in spoken question, "You're possibly wondering on why your body feels so heavy and restricted when you're just wearing your normal clothes, right?" Hitting the nail on the head, she nodded with a huff, saying, "I'm already tired just lifting my arms to form the sign." He nodded, saying while pointing to Suiren, who looked on apologetically, "Understandable, as I had Suiren fit you with gravity and resistance seals to help with your physical training. Seeing as you're most adjusted to a sword, that knocks a thing to learn out of the way, but we have to understand your physical skills since in the bingo book you're considered an S rank because of your killer intent, so nobody knows what else you know besides the fact you carry around a sword. I only know the basics in Kenjutsu, to be honest, and no real style, as Kenny taught me what little he knew in Kendo," she said, getting a nod from him as he understood, seeing as the deceased swordsman relied on his tough skin, massive killer intent and strength to win him fights while he wasn't known for his Kenjutsu style. "Well, until we can find you a suitable style, we'll just work on improving your swordsmanship. Now in the meantime I want you to do this to get used to the seals I put on you, and from there we'll work on a proper fighting style as well," Naruto said, giving her a scroll to read, making her nod. Yachiru Kusajinshi Trial Training Routine. Push-ups. 10 sets of 15. Sit-ups. 10 sets of 15. Squat thrusts. 5 sets of 10. Tree. 10 sets of 20 punches and kicks both limbs. 5 laps around the clearing. Reading this, she gave a large smile before nodding, starting with the top of the list, doing as she was told, albeit with a slow start. At least she's got enthusiasm, something she's going to need for the training later on with the others, Naruto said, getting a nod from Suiren and Tigris. "I feel like she's going to get along well with my little brother," Tigris said, imagining the two of them working together. "Yeah, I can imagine Byuko and Yachiru being a frightening combination, but we have to wait and see how the others feel about her and the others signing their contract or contracts," Naruto said, getting a nod, understanding they had to pass their test when scrolls appeared from his lap. "What are those?" Ino asked, looking from Yachiru, who finished the sit-ups, to Naruto, who was looking through the scrolls, making him look at the contents within. "Well, when I developed the others' training schedule when we left, I placed seals on them that will send me the results for each of them, and so I can send them the next part of their training. It's also very useful for delivering messages," Naruto said, quickly writing out the next training schedule for them all and including several jutsu collections for their collective affinities, and sent them back to the ones who sent them. Panting, the little girl said, I finished the exercises like you told me." Surprised, he saw she had thoroughly worked up a sweat, making him smile, saying, grabbing a canister of cold water for her to drink, "Very good, take a 15-minute break and we can continue to see how well you do in taijutsu and throwing weapons." She nodded with an exhausted grin, taking the cold beverage in hand before guzzling it down while savoring the frozen feeling that cooled her throat, leaning back in satisfaction while Ino did the same after breaking from her bojutsu practice, learning the movements for her long-range weapon. "So Ino, how are you doing in your bojutsu training, getting the handle of it?" Tigris asked, getting a so-so motion. "I got the movements down and the style fits, it's just I need actual combat experience to fully use it. I suppose if we run into bandits I'll use it since I have full use over my swords that all of you made me," the blonde said when a rustling in the bushes got their attention. Out came 2 hooded figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds spread across the clothing. As Ino got out her weapon, Naruto put a hand on her shoulder, shaking his head with a smile. "Hey girls, I honestly wasn't expecting a visit so soon from any of you until we've made contact with Tsunade," Naruto said, getting a feminine cackle from the taller of the two, who had a bandaged sword on her back. "Well, hello Wolfie, pretty lucky we ran into you of all days, wouldn't you say, Hisaya?" the taller of the two said as they pulled down their hoods, showing 2 of the many infamous S-rank missing kunoichi, making the platinum blonde teen pale while the silver-haired woman nodded with a grin on her face. "To be fucking honest, I was expecting it since we were making a beeline to Tanzaku anyway from KUSA making money," the side-carrying woman said with a large grin as the two walked over to Naruto, giving him a hug, pushing their chests against him while Ino stared wide-eyed. "NNN Naruto-kun, do you know who they are?" Ino said with a stutter, reaching for her weapon, making Naruto stare at her. "Judging from your stutter, I'll assume you do as well," he said, getting a frantic nod as she steeled herself. Those two are Hisaya the immortal Jushinist, the S-rank kunoichi, and Kishi the tailless Biju and former member of the Seven Swordsmen, also an S-rank kunoichi of Kiri, she said, getting a grin from the two. The immortal Jushinist, huh? I knew I had a title, but I never imagined it was that fucking awesome. But I gotta say, blonde, for you to know about our ranks and reputations and still have the nerve to challenge us means you've got guts, the light-haired girl said, grabbing her red triple-bladed scythe from her back. You know what we do to people, how got guts, kid? Kishi said with a large grin, making the heiress shake with her weapon in hand before biting her lip, shaking her head. If you were anyone else we'd expose your guts, but you got our Y-Wolf's mark on you like the rest of us, and that means you are safe with us, Kishi said, giving an open-handed pat on the back, making her fumble, getting a cackle from her and the scythe-wielding maniac when her eyes landed on the little girl sitting next to Tigress, when she got huge hearts in her eyes when she vanished. As everyone looked around for the scythe-wielding kunoichi, Yachiru squealed as they saw Hisaya back where she was previously holding Yachiru in her arms, nuzzling her cheek against the little girl who was giggling from the sudden affection the scythe-wielder was showing her. See, Ino, they may be a bit extravagant at times, but they're as human as you or me. Well, I should say demonic, seeing as I marked them as well, but you get my point, they're good, don't worry, and besides they did train me for the finals during the exams, in fact. Naruto said, pausing when he turned, looking into the forest. Yuri-chan, mind coming out and saying hi? Naruto said, making the blonde look at him like he was nuts, talking to nobody when she saw the tree have something grow from it until a woman who wore the same cloak as the other two, while her body was black on one side while the other was white with long green hair and a Venus fly trap on her shoulders about to swallow her head. Hello, Ino, Yamanaka, heiress of Yamanaka clan. The plant woman said with a two-toned voice, making the young girl see it matched the white and black skin tone, as one side was soft while the other was dark with a slight gruff to it. Not wanting to seem rude, she responded, hello, wait, plant-like woman, are you the one who gave the daimyos the black book? Nodding, she said, yes, I did. Before you ask, yes, this is a bloodline, and no, I don't know where it originated from. I'm guessing you get that question a lot? Ino asked, getting a two-toned sigh from the plant woman with a nod given out of annoyance. More times than I'm willing to admit. Oh, and Katsu made these for you too. She made some for the others as well, which I delivered, Yuri said, pulling out 4 matching cloaks of the same design, which Naruto grinned, putting it on as it fit him perfectly. Imagine how Sasuke wore his. Ino's and the others were the standard and Akatsuki design, being a simple cloak with a hood and a high collar inside. When Hisaya said, oh, and expect a guest coming to Tanzaku besides Cowtits and her lovely assistant, 2 people really. Getting smacked in the head by the blue-skinned woman, she said, don't cuss in front of the little cutie. 2-chan, who are these people? Yachiru asked with a cute expression while her cheek was still squished by the worshipper. They're your aunties, sisters, mothers, however you want to address them. I suppose you can call them as either, as long as they're fine with it, he said, sweat dropping as Hisaya has yet to let go of the little girl before Kishi took Yachiru from the raving Akatsuki member, giving her a peck on the forehead before letting her down as she ran to Yuri, surprising the woman with a hug before she ran to the others. Who are we to expect at Tanzaku other than Tsunade and Shizune? He asked as Ino thought for a minute. What about Orochimaru? You did say he is in need of help after using the curse seal so many times. I'm more surprised on how Orochimaru is still breathing right now, Ino said, getting a nod from the 3 women. Yes, our slithery former teammate Orochimaru and his pet Kabuto. He is searching for Tsunade, but he isn't the only person heading to Tanzaku, guy, as it is someone who's been dying to see you since you left for the finals. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have to head back to the base. Our leader Sama is going to have our heads, Kishi said, getting a nod as the 3 of them kissed Naruto and left, waving goodbye as the 3 vanished back into the forest. Seeing the look the platinum blonde was giving him, he said, what? You were trained by some of the elemental nation's most dangerous S-rank kunoichi in the world, and you're going to ask me, what? What's next? You're going to tell me Madara Uchiha, your grandfather and the most dangerous S-rank ninja in the elemental nations, is alive? Ino said, getting a chuckle from Naruto and the others, causing her to smack her forehead. Oh, please don't tell me that's true, she said in desperation, getting a negative from the others. Oh no, not at all, and she is actually my great-grandmother to be precise. After the battle against my great-granduncle Hashirama, she made it to Uzu and met my mom's great-grandfather, and 2 generations later my mom was born, he said, getting a nod before she halted. Wait, did you say she Madara Uchiha is a woman? She said, getting a nod from him. Yeah, although her name is Kurigami Uchiha, actually before she left Konoha she was a bit of a tomboy to be honest, and she kept her chest bound through her entire life after puberty since her father was a East Pig and wanted a son to lead the clan. Back then it was only the eldest child of the clan could rule, but you get the idea with how many clans are. He said, getting a nod from the blonde, remembering how her father told her about her granddad protesting to her being the heiress to run the clan when her dad stepped down as clan head. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense, but did your great-grand-uncle know, or even the Sandame for that matter? She asked, getting a negative from the three. No, he only knows her masculine persona Madara, and that's how she wants it, although we'll have to deal with the rest at a later point since it's getting late. Ino, dispel your clones at the interval you usually do it, he said, getting a nod as in the background several large plumes of smoke formed showing signs of their destruction. Same goes for you, Yachiru. I want you to imagine the clones dispelling together, okay? He said, getting a nod as she closed her eyes when a large plume formed, slowly followed by the others as she wavered slightly, causing her to be caught by Naruto. Whoa there, Yachiru, that's going to happen a couple of times until you get used to it, but as you can see, the effects of the shadow clone jutsu has its advantages. You have as much chakra as me and the others do, so it master it every day. We'll have clones work on chakra control, and since you've mastered the basic control exercises we'll move on to the more advanced techniques tomorrow while we do a more vigorous physical training method from tomorrow on. He said, getting a tired nod before she passed out, making him smile. So Naruto, how long do you think it would take to get her at a high enough point to start learning the summons? Tigress asked, getting a shrug. I wouldn't know, but from my clone's knowledge it took her the day to get her control from an academy student to that of a Chunin. So I would say the clone's working on her chakra control. She should have Sannin level control by the time we get back to the village, and we can work on her ninjutsu and kenjutsu as well, he said, getting a nod as they walked back to the hotel. 1 month overview. Over the time span of the month, Reprieve, Ino and Yachiru grew in terms of skill as well as power, with both of them reaching at the minimum of 4 and 3 tails respectively, and during the month Yachiru's chakra control grew well enough to start further in her ninjutsu when they learned thanks to the ritual giving her Naruto's dojutsu and use of every element. Although that is to say she only knew about a dozen for each element at the moment, and all from the range of low C to high A, as he wanted her to master the jutsu before they moved on to learning more. And as they suspected, she and Ino signed the summoning contract for the Leviathans and Tigers, while Yachiru has a strong friendship with Tigress's brother. The two were a perfect team, both hot-headed but also determined, as the two show it in their training when the bonding process was performed, making Byakugo Yachiru's familiar in the summoning world. Once Naruto deemed she was ready, Byakugo had reversed summoned her to the summoning realm to train in taijutsu and kenjutsu, which she did remarkably well in, as Naruto and the others receive reports on her progress, which was rather quick, as her kenjutsu was considered to be high chunin thanks to her kendo training in spars with Kenpachi, while it was starting to border tokubetsu junin level, as was her taijutsu thanks to her training in gravity and resistance seals. Tanzaku Gai Hotel. Naruto-kun, please can we go one more time? I want another taste of my wolf, Ino said with a moan, rubbing her face into the crook of his neck in their bed, getting a groan from Naruto as Suiren and Tigress went back to the summoning realm to train more with their moms for more training, as they have on a basis to be of further use to Naruto. Grabbing her firm round ass from under the covers with one hand while using his other to comb through her now platinum, silver hair with her old blonde forming in streaks, Naruto opened an eye as he stared at her, saying, I know you want to go again, but Tsunade is supposed to be here today and we have to be on guard, especially with Orochimaru and his lackey in the area as well. He thought to himself, ever since we've mated she's been openly and overly affectionate, although that's not too bad. She just has to get used to her libido, I suppose, and then she'll be fine, although she's the type to enjoy a fight, and that bloodlust being a combination. Oh please Naruto-kun, just one more time and we can leave, she said, causing her bright blue eyes to grow bigger with the slits to constrict while pursing her lower lip, making him roll his eyes with a groan as he felt her hand grip his member, stroking it. Looking at her, he sighed before pulling her head up to his, giving her a kiss before switching their positions with him hovering over her, kissing her neck as he said, Feinheim, one more time, but then we have to go find Tsunade, okay? Not giving a reply, she instead gave a long and throaty purr in pleasure when he sucked on a sensitive spot on her neck while she wrapped her arms around him, feeling him push into her as she gave a long hiss in pleasure. He had to guess all those lessons Hisane and Enko walked him through on how to please women was a godsend despite the embarrassment of being given the talk at the age of 6 while they had him practice with them as he got older. Hours later, walking down the streets of Konoha, Naruto looked to the side and saw Ino had a permanent grin on her face while her eyes were hazy with satisfaction, lust and love shining as the two walked down the streets. Seeing her still distracted, he rolled his eyes saying, "So where do you think we should look first, Ino-han?" About to speak, they heard a loud explosion in the distance, making them turn to see a loud cloud of dust making them turn to each other when Naruto grabbed a man running past them and said, "Hey, what's the cause of the explosion just now?" There was a large snake that brought the castle down," he said, running away, causing the two to nod to each other before running towards the destruction. Tanzaku Gai Castle. Arriving to the scene, they saw what was once a well-known castle in the town was now just a pile of rubble with a large crater far from it, making Ino say, "Was this all Orochimaru?" He shook his head saying, "No, the castle was, but the crater spells Tsunade without a doubt." Raising an eyebrow, she asked, "How do you know it's her?" "I mean, the snake itself had to be large enough to cause the tower to collapse like this. How do we know it wasn't the snake as well? I mean, we would have noticed they were around the village after. It's not too difficult to notice two S-rank ninja walking around in broad daylight." He nodded before saying, "That may be true, Ino, but we're talking about two of the three Sannin and they have had years to master their skills, and hiding their chakra signature isn't that surprising, to be honest." She shrugged saying, "Okay, so where do you think it would be the best to look for her?" Tilting his head, he said, "Well, let's think over what defines her and go from there. She likes to gamble, but her luck is always against her unless it's something that involves her causing her to win, which acts as a warning sign, and she is a massive drinker. And her breasts are bigger than your head with a firm ass," Ino said with a grin, seeing Naruto nod before her caught what she said, making him cut a glare at her, which she whistled at innocently. "Yes, there is that, but let's focus on the other points. And she also has a clean pig with beads around its neck as a pet with her assistant and apprentice Shizune with her at all times," he said, getting a nod from her. "So we visit every bar and casino in the town? That doesn't sound too hard. I mean, how many could there be of each in here? 4 or 5 of both?" Ino said, getting a nod. "About that many, so wanna create a couple clones and have them scour the place in pairs to narrow down our search?" he said, getting a nod as they created 4 clones each before they hanged their clothes into a pair of nice clothes and ran off. "You just want to screw a couple casinos into bankruptcy," she said, getting an insulted expression from her future husband as Naruto scoffed. "Me no, but if they themselves are willing to part with their hard-earned money, who am I to deny them?" Naruto said, getting an eye roll from the blonde. "Whatever, why, let's just get somewhere to wait for our clones," Ino said, grabbing Naruto by his arm, dragging him to a high point in the village as the two sat on a tree at the top branch with Ino sitting on his lap as they watched the people in the town walk around enjoying themselves in silence. Half-hour later, after a moment of peace, Naruto felt something poke his head, making him crack open an eye, seeing his and Ino's clones standing in front of them with 4 scrolls in hand as he pocketed them before they dispelled, causing the platinum-haired woman to open her eyes. "I still can't believe you got that much money in only a half an hour, making them go out bankrupt, Naruto-kun," Ino said as she got up, standing on the branch, stretching as Naruto got up as well. "Hey, one of your clones said I'm just lucky, so mine decided to call her on it, but I am still thoroughly impressed with how much we made on top of the large amount my parents had in their collective accounts," he said as he put the scrolls in his pouches. "It's safe to say you're the richest shinobi in the history of the elemental nations," Ino said, getting a nod from Naruto as they stared at the places their clones were. "Well, we eliminated 4 of the bars and casinos, so all that leaves is," Ino said, looking down at a small shack that left much to be desired. "A small building compared to the other large monuments to gambling that you wouldn't suspect," Naruto finished as they hopped down, landing on their feet with practiced ease. "Shall we go confront Tsunade now, Naruto-kun?" Ino asked, getting a nod when he felt someone was watching him, making him turn only to see nothing. "Something wrong, Naruto-kun?" Ino asked as he stared a little longer before shaking his head. "I'm fine, it's just I felt like we're being watched since we made our clones, and whatever's watching us was watching them as well, making me think they used some form of clone to do so," Naruto said as he turned to Ino. "Maybe it's those people Kishi, Hisaya and Yuri were talking about that wanted to see you?" Ino proposed, getting a nod. "It seems like it, although I wonder why it's from a distance," he said, getting a shrug as they walked through the town to their object of focus. "Probably they're nervous or something?" She responded, getting a nod as he guessed the same thing. In the distance. Why didn't you appear to him yet? Kushina asked, getting a sigh from her fellow Akatsuki member. I'm just waiting for them to walk inside. It has been a while since I saw Tsunade, was before I was killed, and want to introduce myself to Naruto and see sensei again. Although I'm surprised you didn't just go see Naruto yourself, Kushina. After all, you and the others keep talking about how good he is, and judging from the limp the silver-haired girl had, he is that good. The cloaked figure said, getting a sigh from Kushina. Let's just go, and I know you want to meet another Uzumaki besides me and Mayu, right? Kushina said, getting an obvious blank expression despite not being able to see it. Yes, I want to meet Naruto, but we have other matters to deal with, like helping Naruto-kun get Tsunade to join our side, she said, getting a nod as they ran to the same bar, casino Naruto and Ino entered not too long ago. In the bar, walking in, Naruto and Ino stepped in, looking around the bar to see Tsunade and Shizune sitting in a booth together with a pig wearing beads around its neck, while Ino stared at Tsunade's breasts, making her look at her own with a frown, thinking, what the fuck does that woman eat? Cutting her a look, he said as they walked through the room, Ino, you know your breasts are perfect the way they are, right? She nodded, leaving it at that when they came to a stop in front of the three, making the hazel brown-eyed blonde to look up from her sake, saying, what do you want? Staring at her, Naruto said politely, sorry to bother you ladies, but my girlfriend and I wanted to know if you had room for 2 more since the other booths are full? Seeing her and her apprentice look around, they saw they were full. They nodded, making the two smile in appreciation as Ino said, thank you so much, and what a cute pig. Shizune smiled, petting the swine's head, getting an appreciative oink, saying, thank you, Tonton is a good friend. So what are 2 brats doing out here in town, and a Yamanaka at that? Tsunade said, making the former blonde to stare at her in surprise. Despite your hair being more platinum than blonde and your eyes being more of a dark blue than the sapphire blue they're known for, you still look like a Yamanaka, so it's not a fact I couldn't notice. So what do Konoha ninja want? Tsunade asked, getting a sideways glance from Naruto. Actually, my boyfriend isn't a Konoha ninja anymore. He works for Lord Menace and Lady Mai, and it is on Lord Menace's order for you to return to Konoha to fix your sensei's follies, Ino said, getting a short glare from the busty blonde. Watch what you say about Sensei Brad. Besides, why would I do a damn thing for the village after all it's taken from me? Tsunade said, getting a grunt from behind them. Actually, Tsunade, you might be interested in listening to my son and his girlfriend and hear what they tell you. It will enlighten you and help with your decisions from here on. They heard, making them turn to see Kushina and the cloaked figure. Hello again, Sensei. The cloaked figure said, pulling down her hood, showing the thought-to-be deceased Rin Inuzuka, who wore her hair the same as she had before. Kei Kushina and our Rin, Tsunade said with an audible gasp from the 2 medics as Naruto stared at the situation in interest.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.